long before the age of gods, before mankind, monsters, or even the idea of time itself. There was only one thing: chaos. Not chaos as we know it, wild, frenzied disorder, but chaos as the Greeks imagined it, a yawning, endless void. It was not darkness. It was not silence. It was nothing. No land to walk on, no air to breathe, no fire to warm the skin or water to soothe the thirst. Just a deep, infinite absence. A vast gulf between all things that could be, and nothingness itself. It was not alive. It was not dead. It simply was. And from this timeless vacuum, this cosmic stillness, the first flickers of being began to form. Out of chaos, the first great powers emerged, not gods, as we think of them today, but primordial entities, beings so fundamental that they were the very building blocks of reality. The first was Gaia, the earth. She did not rise like a plant from the soil, for there was no soil yet. She simply became so self-generating force. Gaia unfolded beneath, chaos like a cradle, broad, fertile, and eternal. She was not a woman, not yet, but she would later take the form of one. She was land, soil, stone, and womb. Next came Tartarus, not a place beneath the earth, but rather the deep darkness within it. A realm so far below the surface that even death feared its depth. Where Gaia was the base, Tartarus was the piton, endless chasm beneath all existence. Then came Eros, the force of desire, not erotic love as we now define it, but the first impulse of union, the mysterious magnetism that draws two things together. Without Eros, Gaia would not have been able to birth, Tartarus would never receive, and even chaos would remain alone. He was the spark that made becoming possible, not a god of flesh and romance, but a cosmic law of attraction. Erebus was born next, the personification of darkness, thick and impenetrable, and alongside Erebus came Nyx, the night, a velvet blackness so ancient and powerful that even Zeus, much later, would fear her. All these beings emerged from chaos and from one another. Erebus and Nyx, drawn together by the whisper of Eros, gave birth to even more fundamental forces. Ether, the bright upper air that only gods could breathe, and Hemera, the day. Ether was the pure sky above the world, and Hemera, the first morning. So the world began to take shape, not with tools or hands, but through a quiet, generative unfolding Gaia, eternal and alone, now stirred with longing. And so, from within herself, she birthed Uranus the sky. He stretched over her, a dome of stars and storm and endless sky. And when he lay upon her, the first union of heaven and earth took place. They were not husband and wife as mortals understand it, but matter and motion, above and below, seeking unity. From their union came the first generation of children. These would not be humans, nor Olympians. They would be Titans, Gaia, and Uranus. Birthed 12 children, 6 sons, 6 daughters. The sons were Oceanus, the endless river that circled the world. Cous, the intellect and questioning mind. Cronus, the force of constellations and celestial order. Hyperion, the titan of light and the sun. Iapetus, the bringer of mortality and craftsmanship. And Cronus, the youngest, sharpest, and most cunning. And their sisters, they, goddess of sight and shining light. Rhea, the flow of time and fertility. Themis, law and divine order. Mnemosyne, memory and the voice of history. Phoebe, bright intellect and prophecy. And Tethys, the nourishing mother of all rivers. Each Titan would eventually embody a concept so vast, so elemental, that the ancient Greeks viewed them as the pillars of the world itself. But these were not the only beings Gaia birthed. In her depths, Gaia bore other, more terrifying creatures. From her union with Uranus came the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants, whose gaze burned with power. They were strong, crude, and brilliant craftsmen. Then came the Hecatonchyres, beings of such overwhelming strength that the mind reels to imagine them. Each had 100 arms and 50 heads, howling with wind and fire. They embodied the chaotic forces of storms and earthquakes. Uranus saw these beings and shuddered. He was not a nurturing father. He did not look upon them with pride. He feared them, specially the Hecatonchyres. He called them abominations. So, Uranus took them and shoved them back into Gaia's womb. One after the other, he buried them deep within her, pushing them into her very flesh, locking them away in her earthbound body. And Gaia, once the mother of all, began to ache. She groaned under the weight of her imprisoned children. She felt violated, betrayed, and slowly, silently, she began to hate her mate. Gaia, in agony, whispered across the surface of the world. To her Titan children, she sent a plea. "Help me overthrow your father." At first, none answered. Uranus was too powerful, and the Titans too afraid. Only Cronus, the youngest, the sharpest, and the most ambitious, stepped forward. He did not act out of compassion. He acted out of hunger. Hunger for power, hunger for freedom, hunger for destiny. Gaia, proud of her son's boldness, forged for him a weapon, not great sickle of adamantine, stronger than anything that had ever existed, sharper than any edge the world would ever know. When Uranus next descended upon Gaia, covering her again with sky, Cronus emerged from the shadows, and with a single motion, he sliced through his father's flesh and severed his genitals from his body. Uranus screamed a sound so violent it rang through the heavens and into the deep. His blood fell to the earth, seeding new life where it struck. From it would spring the Erinyes, the Furies, the Gigantes, the giants, and the Malaya nymphs of the ash tree. And his severed genitals, cast into the sea, floated through the foam. From that foam would arise one more being, one more echo of divine violence and desire. A goddess who would haunt the hearts of gods and men for all eternity. She was called Aphrodite, the embodiment of beauty and love. Born not of union, but of destruction. The heavens were now silent. Uranus, wounded and dethroned, faded into the sky. He became sky without Wilmere vault above the world, and Cronus, standing amidst the blood of a god, lifted the sickle in triumph. He had overthrown his father. He was now the ruler of the cosmos. The age of the Titans had begun. Cronus now held dominion over the cosmos. The world, raw and unformed, was his to shape. With Rhea at his side, he presided over the golden age of the Titans, a time before mankind, before war, before death itself. The rivers flowed undammed. The sun rose and set without rebellion. Crops grew from Gaia's skin without need of seed or plow. It was a world of effortless abundance. But beneath this serenity, Cronus was haunted by a single echo of prophecy. From the moment he seized power, Gaia had whispered a warning that just as he had overthrown his father, so too would he be overthrown by his own child. The words burrowed deep into Cronus's mind. Every cry of a newborn filled him with dread. Every look Rhea gave him stirred paranoia. And so, the king of the Titans made a choice. Each time Rhea bore him a child, Cronus swallowed it whole. He did not strike them down. He feared the blood of his own kind, but with each child's birth, he opened his mouth wide and consumed them, trapping their divine essence within his gut. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, 5 children, 5 gods, swallowed before they could take their first steps. Their screams echoed only for a moment before being drowned in silence. And Rhea, their mother, wept in secret. She pleaded, she reasoned, but Cronus would not bend. And so, when she became pregnant with her 6th child, she did not turn to her husband. She turned to Gaia, the earth, ancient and wise, consoled her daughter, and laid out a plan. When the time came to give birth, Rhea journeyed in secret to the island of Crete. There, Hidden in the shadowed cave of Mount Ida, she brought her sixth child into the world, a boy, a god, one who would change the fate of all existence. She named him Zeus. In his place, Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth, wet with afterbirth, and returned to Cronus. Without hesitation, Cronus swallowed the bundle whole. He believed he had cheated fate, but fate cannot be deceived, not for long. Meanwhile, Zeus nursed in secret, fed by the divine goat Amalthea. Some say bees brought him honey, others say nymphs raised him, while bronze-shielded warriors, the Curetes, clashed their weapons to hide his cries. The mountain air thickened with potential. Every moment he grew, the world held its breath. And when Zeus reached manhood, he descended the slopes of Mount Ida with a heart full of thunder. He traveled across the earth and sky, seeking those who still believed in the old whispers. Among them was Metis, the goddess of wisdom and cunning. She gave him a potion, a bitter draught brewed from root and ash, meant to wrench the truth from any liar and the contents from any stomach. Zeus disguised himself and served this potion to Cronus in a golden cup. The Titan drank, his stomach churned, and then, in great convulsions, he vomited forth the 5 children he had swallowed whole, alive, radiant with divine fury. One by one they emerged: Hestia, the keeper of the hearth; Demeter, the spirit of harvest; Hera, queenly and proud; Hades, dark and solemn; Poseidon, deep and wild; and last, the stone, slick with ancient bile, clattered onto the earth. Zeus lifted the stone and placed it in Delphi, at the heart of the world, where it would become the Omphalos, the navel of the earth. The gods stood together at last, 6 siblings, 1 vengeance. Cronus watched, and for the first time, he saw fear reflected in his own eyes. The gods raised arms against the old rulers. They climbed Mount Olympus and declared war on the Titans. So began the Titanomachy war, not of years, but of ages. Thunder cracked, fire rained, the mountains split. For 10 years, the cosmos was torn asunder in a war of brother against brother, child against parent, sky against earth. Cronus led the Titans from Mount Othrys. The Olympians fought from Mount Olympus. The earth became a battlefield, and time itself seemed to fracture. The Titans were mighty. They had shaped the world before the first sunrise. They wielded strength that bent stone and boiled rivers. And slowly, the tide turned against the young gods. But Gaia whispered again. She reminded Zeus of his buried brothers, the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires, locked away in Tartarus by Uranus so long ago. Beings of immense power, forgotten and alone. Zeus, bold and desperate, descended into the pit, past the molten walls, past the screaming void. He broke the gates of Tartarus and freed the prisoners of old. The Cyclopes, in gratitude, forged him a gift, a thunderbolt light itself, chained and weaponized. For Poseidon, they crafted a trident that could shatter islands and stir oceans to rage. For Hades, a helm of invisibility, so he could walk unseen through shadow and war. And with these gifts, the gods returned to the battlefield. Zeus hurled his thunderbolt. Lightning split the sky. Poseidon crashed the sea against the earth, drowning whole armies. Hades moved in silence, striking fear from unseen places. The war shifted. One by one, the Titans fell. Some fought to the end. Others wept as they were dragged into chains. Zeus did not forget mercy. He simply did not offer it. He cast the Titans into Tartarus. There, in the black belly of the world, they were bound in chains so heavy, no time could wear them down. At the gates, Zeus placed the Hecatonchires as their wardens, once prisoners, now jailers. Screams rose and fell beneath the earth, but none escaped. Only a few Titans were spared: Prometheus, who had joined the gods, and his brother Epimetheus; Themis, the voice of divine law; Mnemosyne, who held the songs of memory; and Atlas, the general of the Titans, he received a punishment of unique cruelty. Zeus commanded him to stand at the edge of the world and hold the sky upon his shoulders for all eternity. Not the world, as later tales would say, but the heavens. He would bear the very weight of Uranus, the father they had betrayed. And so, the war ended. The skies grew quiet, the storms receded, the earth healed. The three bros Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades cast lots to divide the world. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon, the sea, Hades, the underworld, the surface of the world, the realm of mortals, yet to come. They ruled together, though it was Zeus who held the throne atop Mount Olympus, but the cost was not forgotten. The war had broken the old order. The world would never again be innocent. Beneath the ground, the Titans stirred. They remembered sunlight, they remembered power, and though their time had passed, their story had only just begun. The age of chaos had ended. The age of Titans had fallen, and the age of gods had begun. In the beginning, there was only Gaia, and from her, the earth took form. But even the earth needs a sky. So from within herself, Gaia birthed Uranus, the heavens. He stretched across her like a ceiling of stars, embracing her in silence. When the two became one, their union gave birth to the first children of the world beings, vast, elemental, eternal. Among them was one who would shape the fate of all things. His name was Cronus. Cronus was not the firstborn. He was not the strongest, but he was the most cunning. Among the 12 Titans, those ancient children of earth and sky, Cronus was the one who listened the closest to the silence between words. The one who waited longer than others were willing to. He watched Uranus with eyes that saw not just a father, but a tyrant. For Uranus feared the children he had created. The moment Gaia brought forth the monstrous Hecatoncheires and the Cyclopes, Uranus recoiled. He called them hideous. He called them mistakes. And rather than let them roam free, he forced them back into Gaia's body, into the earth itself. Gaia, bloated with her own children, trembled in pain. Her womb became a prison. No one dared to defy Uranus. Not yet, not until Cronus. Gaia whispered her agony to her son, and Cronus answered not with sympathy, but with resolve. He would end the pain not for her sake, but for his own ascent. Gaia, desperate and betrayed, carved for him a sickle of unbreakable stone, sharp enough to sever the stars, and with it, Cronus waited in the shadows. When Uranus descended again to embrace Gaia, Cronus struck. The sickle sliced through the sky, cutting away Uranus's genitals and casting them into the sea. The scream that followed echoed through the bones of the earth. From the blood that spilled upon the land, new beings were born, spirits of vengeance, madness, and divine power. From the foam that churned in the sea, Aphrodite would rise, her beauty born from pain. With his father overthrown, Cronus stood triumphant. He was now king. The sky belonged to him. The earth was quiet. The stars looked down and blinked in awe. And yet, as he lifted the sickle high, the blood still dripping from its edge, the prophecy was already forming. The first act of his rule was to free his imprisoned siblings. The Titans walked the earth freely now, each claiming dominion over a part of existence. Oceanus flowed around the world. Hyperion lit the skies. Themis brought law. Rhea, Cronus's sister and queen, brought forth the rhythms of birth and growth. For a time the world prospered. This was the golden age. Under Cronus, there was no need for work. The crops grew without labor. Trees bent gently to offer their fruit. Men, those early proto-humans, shaped by the gods, lived without sorrow, toil, or pain. They did not age. They did not die. They simply existed, in harmony, under a silent sky. Cronus ruled from a throne of quiet authority. He was no thunder hurler, like Zeus would become. His power was not loud, not dazzling, but vast, and cold, and still. He did not rage. He waited, and he listened. But the silence that surrounded him was not peace. It was fear. He knew what he had done to Uranus. He knew what Gaia had whispered to him, and he knew that prophecy would come for him in turn. One of his children would rise. One of his own blood would cast him down. And so, Cronus did the only thing a fearful god can do. He devoured the future. The moment Rhea gave birth to Hestia, their first child Cronus opened his mouth and swallowed her. There was no ceremony, no mourning, no hesitation. She vanished into his gut like a secret. When Demeter was born, the same fate awaited her. Then Hera, then Hades, then Poseidon. Each time, Rhea's arms were left empty. Each time, her womb was robbed of its purpose. She begged him to stop. She reasoned, pleaded, cried. But Cronus, ever watchful, ever afraid, saw in every infant the blade that would one day be used against him. He had no room in his heart for fatherhood, only for survival, and so the Golden Age continued, beautiful and still, but empty at its core. Cronus became not just the ruler of time, but its jailer. He kept the future sealed within himself, thinking he could preserve the present forever. But time does not wait. It only pretends to. When Rhea became pregnant for the 6th time, her sorrow hardened into something else resolve. She went to Gaia, who had seen this story unfold once before. Together, they crafted a deception. When the time came, Rhea gave birth in secret, far from Cronus's watchful eyes. She laid her newborn son upon the soft moss of Mount Ida in Crete. The child was named Zeus, in place of her son. Rhea swaddled a stone and handed it to Cronus. He devoured it without question. On Mount Ida, the air grew heavy with destiny. The child nursed from the goat Amalthea, drank the milk of divine beasts, and grew with the speed of storms. Warriors known as the Curetes danced and clashed their spears to hide his cries. The earth shuddered, not in fear, but in anticipation, and when Zeus came of age, he did not sneak, he did not whisper, he marched. He descended from the mountain with lightning in his eyes. Cronus, still seated upon his invisible throne, did not see the boy at first. He saw only a servant, a cupbearer, a whisperer in the court of gods. But Zeus brought with him a potion brewed by Metis, and poured it into his father's drink. The moment Cronus swallowed, he felt the rebellion rise. He fell to his knees, his stomach twisted, and from his body came the children he thought he had sealed away. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. They emerged whole, untouched by time, glowing with the wrath of the betrayed. The war that followed tore the earth apart. The war between gods and titans was not fought in days or years, it spanned epochs. Mountains crumbled, rivers boiled, stars blinked out under the weight of divine fury. Cronus, who had once overthrown the sky itself, now stood against his own children. He rallied the Titans to his cause. From the black peaks of Mount Othrys, he summoned the old power. Oceanus refused to fight, but most of the others came. Cus, Crius, Iapetus, Hyperion. They stood beside Cronus, not for love or loyalty, but because he was their brother, and because the past had always ruled the present. Zeus and his siblings held fast to Mount Olympus, a mountain not yet known for gods but for thunder. Their forces were smaller, younger, untested. But the difference between them and the Titans was not just age. The Olympians were born not into a world of stillness, but one of tension, prophecy, and fire. They knew they were meant to rule, and so, they did not fight for tradition, they fought for destiny. At first, Cronus believed the battle would be easy. He had defeated his father. He had ruled the cosmos in silence for ages. He believed power was something that could be kept by fear. But as the war dragged on, he saw something unfamiliar in his children's eyes. Unity. Not fear, not competition, but purpose. And then Zeus descended into Tartarus. There, in the dark pit beneath the world, he shattered the gates his grandfather had forged. He freed the Cyclopes, those one-eyed smiths of fire and storm, and he freed the Hecatoncheires, Those 100-armed monsters Uranus had buried in fear, they emerged roaring, not in rage, but in relief. The Cyclopes forged a gift. For Zeus, they made the thunderbolt a weapon that crackled with raw judgment, shaped by the fury of abandonment. For Poseidon, they made the trident, to churn seas and shatter stone. For Hades, the helm of invisibility, to move in silence through shadow. When they returned to the battlefield, the Titans knew the tide had turned. Cronus still stood at the center, his sickle at his side, his voice cold as ever. But the thunderbolt cut the sky. The trident split the mountains. The 100-armed ones hurled boulders the size of cities. Cronus fought. He did not cry out. He did not flee. But the stillness in him had cracked. He struck Zeus with winds older than language. He slashed at Hades with memories of silence. But none of it was enough. The prophecy did not hesitate. It did not waver. It had always been written. Zeus hurled the final bolt. The sickle fell from Cronus's hand. The sky turned white, and then quiet. The war was over. The Titans were chained and cast into Tartarus, Cronus included. Deep in the earth, behind bronze gates, guarded by the very monsters he once imprisoned, he now sat in silence, not ruling, not waiting, just existing. Some say he was cut to pieces by his own children. Others say he was left whole, left to remember. A god of time, alone with nothing but time. But that was not the end of Cronus. In later myths, softer myths, there are whispers that Zeus did not keep his father in Tartarus forever, that he released him, in pity. That Cronus was allowed to rule the Isles of the Blessed, a paradise where noble souls rest. There, Cronus becomes again the king of a golden age. Not of fear, not of control, but of peace. This version of Cronus is older, slower, a god no longer clinging to power, but watching from a distance as the world grows without him. In this telling, he is not cruel, he is tired, but that is not how the ancients always saw him. To the Orphic poets, Cronus was more than a god. He was the force of time itself. Not the ticking of a clock, but the devouring spiral that swallows all things. He was Cronus, not just a name, but the embodiment of eternity, of cycles that consume, of age and erosion. He is the father who eats his children, the past that tries to consume the future, the stillness that fears change, and yet it is because of him that change exists. Without Cronus, Uranus would have ruled forever. Without fear, he would never have struck first. Without his cruelty, Zeus would not have risen. Time, in its devouring hunger, makes way for rebirth. In every ticking moment, Cronus still exists. In every fear that the future will undo what we've built. In every parent who dreads being replaced by their child. In every empire that clings to old power. In every golden age that ends, not with war, but with silence. Cronus is the still point before collapse, the quiet king, the devourer of legacy, but also the path through which new gods must pass. He was never just a villain. He was never just a tyrant. He was the unavoidable truth, that all things fall, that all power fades, that even kings are born from wounds and end in chains, and so he waits, beneath the earth, not in hatred, not in hope, but in memory. Cronus, the first king of the cosmos, the god who ended the sky, the father of gods, and the eater of his own children. Not evil, not good, just time. Rhea was born in silence. She was the daughter of Gaia and Uranus, one of the 12 original Titans, vast beings, who embodied the bones of the universe itself. From her earliest moments, Rhea was not loud like her brother Hyperion, not curious, like Cous, nor vengeful, like Iapetus. She was steady. She was rhythm. She was the whisper of life that continues, no matter the chaos above or the silence below. She was the flow of time that does not fight or command, but waits and moves forward, always forward. Her name meant ease, or flow, or ground that gives way gently underfoot. And from the moment she opened her eyes, the world around her grew quiet. Rhea was not a queen at first. She was not even a bride. She was a watcher. As her siblings struggled against Uranus, as Gaia's womb ached with the weight of imprisoned children, Rhea stood beside the pain and did not look away. She saw Gaia's fury and Cronus's ambition. She saw the glint of the sickle before it was ever raised. And when the blood of Uranus fell upon the earth, and Cronus took his place as ruler of the sky, Rhea stepped forward not with violence, but with presence. Cronus chose her to be his queen, perhaps because she was his sister, perhaps because she did not challenge him, or perhaps because he knew that something in her could soothe what stirred beneath the surface. And for a while, it seemed enough. Under their reign, the Golden Age began. The earth fed itself. The winds moved in harmony. Creatures lived without fear or pain. And for a time, even Cronus believed that the world might stay still. But Rhea knew better. She knew that all things, even stillness, carry within them the seed of change. When her first child was born, Hestia, warm and glowing, Rhea held her with wonder. But when she brought the infant to Cronus, he took the child in silence and swallowed her whole. No cry, no resistance, just a smooth, dreadful gulp, and a silence that fell so hard it cracked the air. Rhea froze. Her arms were still outstretched, cradling air. She said nothing. She did not weep, not then. She watched him turn his back and return to his throne. Then, she turned and walked away. And the next time she gave birth, it happened again, and again, and again. Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, one by one, her children were taken from her. Their divine bodies imprisoned within the very man who was meant to protect them. And each time, she handed them over. Not because she agreed, not because she feared, but because she was waiting. Rhea did not scream. She did not plot. She endured. She endured 5 times, and then she stopped. When her 6th child stirred within her, something shifted, not in Cronus, not in the sky, but within Rhea herself. A quiet voice that said, enough. She fled to Gaia, her mother, the earth itself. Gaia welcomed her, not with sorrow, but with fire. Together, they laid their plan, in roots and stone. Rhea gave birth in secret on the island of Crete, under the sheltering arms of Mount Ida. There, her last son came into the world, small, wailing, but fierce. She named him Zeus. He was not yet a god, not yet a king. He was simply a child. But, in his first cry, Rhea heard something she had not heard in centuries, and hope. She wrapped the stone in cloth, slick with afterbirth, and cradled it in her arms. She returned to Cronus with the same calm face, the same quiet hands. When she offered the bundle, Cronus took it. He swallowed the stone, and Rhea turned away, not with grief, but with purpose. Her child was alive, hidden, safe. The world did not change immediately. Cronus still ruled. The skies still bent around his will. But something beneath the surface had broken. A rhythm had been disrupted. The silent, suffering queen was no longer silent, and she was no longer alone. As Zeus grew in secret, Rhea tended the world. She still walked beside her husband. She still bore the title of queen, but she no longer served the stillness. She moved through time with new intent. The Curetes, those ancient dancers who clashed their spears in ritual rhythm, began to train in her honor. The nymphs who nursed Zeus came to revere her not as a Titaness, but as a mother beyond measure. When Zeus returned, Rhea stood behind him. When he tricked Cronus into vomiting up the swallowed gods, she stood beside her children as they rose, radiant and whole. When war erupted between Titans and Olympians, Rhea did not fight with weapons. She fought with memory. She reminded the earth of what was at stake. And when the war ended, when the Titans were bound and cast into Tartarus, Rhea remained. She was not imprisoned. She was not punished. She had never lifted a hand in violence. But she had shattered the future Cronus tried to hold. The new gods, her children, took their thrones. Zeus in the sky, Poseidon in the sea, Hades in the underworld, Hera, Demeter, Hestia, all ruling domains of their own. The world was divided, but the roots ran through her. She withdrew from Olympus, not in exile, but in grace. She had done what no one else could. She had preserved the next world, while standing inside the old one. In later myths, Rhea becomes more than a mother. She becomes the mother, the one whose pain birthed gods, the one whose silence was not weakness, but patience. In Phrygia, she would be worshipped as Cybele, the great mother, crowned in towers, accompanied by lions. Her image would be carved into mountain walls, not as a queen beside a king, but as a sovereign force, one who bore the world on her back and never asked for thanks. She is the rhythm of growth, the pulse beneath grief, the breath between heartbreak and healing. She is not Hera's rage, nor Demeter's mourning, nor Hestia's peace. She is the source from which they all emerge. Rhea does not speak often in myth. She does not command, but her presence is felt in every story of survival, in every birth that defies death, in every mother who keeps her child safe. Even when the world turns cruel, she is the queen who did not crown herself, but earned her name in every whispered song, every cradle rock, every root that curls through stone. She is the earth's echo, the mother of gods, the one who gave time back to the future. He never stood among the others. When the Titans gathered beneath the sky, when their names echoed through the bones of the earth, the Cynus was already drifting beyond the edges of their stories. He was the first to be born of Gaia and Uranus, but he did not hunger for thrones or storms. He had no craving for dominion or vengeance. He was content to flow. From the moment of his birth, he moved, not in strides or roars, but in currents, in spirals, in silence, while his brothers took two mountains and skies and the fires beneath the world. Oceanus circled it. He stretched endlessly, a divine ribbon of living water that curled around the world's edge. The Greeks did not call him a sea, not truly. He was a river, they said, a river that had no beginning and no end. It was not salt that marked his touch, but origin. All waters flowed from him, all rivers were his sons, all springs his daughters, and all the life that grew between them had, at some moment, passed through his hands. He did not sit on a throne. He did not build a kingdom. He watched. He waited. He poured his strength into the edges of the earth and watched the sky turn, while Cronus raised the sickle against his father. While the heavens were torn from Gaia's embrace, Oceanus flowed on. He did not cheer. He did not stop. When his siblings cried out in rebellion or rage or triumph, he listened, but he never joined. When Cronus took power, Oceanus did not bend the knee, nor did he challenge him. He simply continued, a god that neither obeyed nor defied, but endured. Cronus understood, in the way distant brothers sometimes understand one another, that Oceanus was not to be claimed. He ruled nothing but encircled everything. That was enough. It was Tethys who came to him, not the other way around. His sister, fluid and vast in her own right, joined him not with vows or crowns but with stillness. The two of them shared no ceremony. Their union was not forged in the fires of power, but in the gentler rhythm of time, and from their harmony, life spilled forth. Thousands of children, the Oceanid's daughters, who sang in the voices of mountain springs and cloud-heavy rains. The Potamoi sons who thundered through valleys, wore canyons into stone, who carved the world into form. So many that their names filled scrolls and songs and faded into forgotten myth. Not because they were unimportant, but because they were too many, too ever-present. They were the background of life, the unnoticed music of the world. Oceanus loved them all. not in the way mortals love with urgency or passion, but with something deeper. He moved within them, he became them, he allowed them to carry his spirit into the world, and then beyond it. He did not command them. He simply let them go. The world changed as mortals were formed, and the Olympians began to stir in Rhea's womb. Oceanus felt the shift before it rippled across the land. He felt the stillness in Cronus calcify into fear. He felt the silence in Rhea tremble into motion. He watched as Zeus was born, raised, and unleashed upon the world. And when the first stones were thrown in the war between the gods and the Titans, Oceanus did nothing. He did not march to Mount Othrys. He did not answer the call of his brother. He stood at the edge of the world, where his waters lapped against the sky, and he waited. The war thundered across the earth, stars blinked out, mountains shattered. Gods were unmade, but Oceanus flowed on. Some Titans cursed him for his silence, others pitied him. Some said he was a coward, unwilling to choose a side. But they misunderstood. Oceanus did not choose, because the war was not his. He did not believe in dominion. He believed in distance, not in retreat, but in perspective. While the others fought for control of the sky or the sea or the underworld, Oceanus watched the boundaries between them. He did not care who ruled Olympus, because he had never asked to live there. He had no desire for titles. He did not need a throne to be eternal. He survived the fall. When the Titans were cast into Tartarus, Oceanus remained. No chains were forged for him. No punishment was given. Zeus, wise enough to see what his father had not, left the old god alone. Oceanus had not fought against him, had not fought at all. He had only watched. And yet, even in silence, Oceanus held more power than most gods dared to dream of. His children remained. His rivers still flowed. His daughters whispered in the ears of mortals. His currents shaped coasts, fed forests, carried ships from port to port. He was not worshipped in the grand halls of Olympus, but sailors poured wine into the sea before they departed, praying not to Poseidon, but to something older. To the river that encircled the world, they called his name as they vanished into fog. Oceanus. He had no form that could be captured in sculpture. Sometimes, he was imagined as a bearded man with horns and the tail of a serpent. Other times, as a river so vast it had no shores. But most of the time, he was not imagined at all. He was simply felt. He was in the lull of water lapping against a boat, in the quiet before a storm. In the breath that hangs between question and answer, Oceanus did not demand belief. He simply was. In some stories, he gives counsel. When Hera needs to hide from Zeus, she comes not to her mother or her sisters, but to Oceanus. She trusts him, even as the skies rage. He shelters her, and he says little, but his silence speaks volumes. Even the queen of the gods turns to the edge when the center begins to break. In the Orphic tradition, Oceanus is linked to rebirth too. The river's souls must pass through before forgetting their past lives. He is not only the edge of the world, but the edge of memory, a place where time stops, or begins again, and still, he does not speak. Oceanus exists in the spaces gods overlook. He is not the drama of Olympus. He is the pulse beneath it, the ancient rhythm of flow and return. He never wanted to be known. That is the secret to understanding Oceanus. While other gods and titans fought to etch their names into stone, to echo through myths and temples and prayers, Oceanus drifted beyond memory, not because he was forgotten, but because he chose to be unspoken. What need does the river have for names? It flows regardless. The ancients, in their poetry, sometimes glimpsed this. Homer did not place him on Olympus, nor in Tartarus. He wrote of Oceanus as the fountain of all life, the origin of gods and men, not as a being, but a boundary, the water before birth, the flow after death. Oceanus was not a person to the Greeks. He was an idea. He was the world's edge, the comfort and terror of the unknown, the place where the stars dipped down and vanished, the space where maps ended and monsters began. But there were no monsters in Oceanus, only depth. He was the calm at the end of chaos. In dreams, sailors sometimes saw him as a father, vast, weathered, made of mist and waves. He would stand at the shore, watching as ships disappeared, not calling them back, not guiding them forward, just witnessing. And when they awoke, they did not remember his face, but they remembered the feeling of being seen by something old enough to forget its own name. Oceanus never wept when the Titans fell. He never rose when the gods took their seats. But his waters bore them all. Every divine footstep, every sacred pilgrimage, every drift of cloud and fog and foam, all passed through his body. Even Poseidon, who claimed the sea as his realm, did not rule Oceanus. Poseidon's waters were within the world. Oceanus flowed around it. Poseidon was worshipped in temples. Oceanus was met in silence. There are whispers in later traditions that Oceanus was more than just water, that he was time. Not like Cronus, the devourer of ages, but time as stillness, time as patience, the uncounted time before the first word, the waiting time between breaths. He was not time that moved, but time that held, the place where eternity folds in on itself and becomes quiet. And yet, for all his distance, Oceanus was not uncaring. He sent his daughters to tend to the world, to weave the clouds, to bless the rivers, to whisper to heroes. The Oceanids were not loud, but they were present. They heard the first cries of the newborn. They carried the tears of widows. They wrapped themselves around the ankles of the dying. Through them, Oceanus touched everything, gently, without trace. When mortals stood at the shore, staring out into waves that stretched beyond sight, they were staring into him. When they feared what lay beyond the horizon, they were fearing him. When they dreamed of freedom, of escape, of sailing to where the gods could not see, they were dreaming of him, even now. When the sea is mapped and charted, when satellites have drawn lines through every fog bank and island, Oceanus remains, not in salt, but in the idea, the notion that there is still something beyond, that there is still a place the world does not know, that the edge still exists, not in space, but in mind. He is not gone. He never needed temples, because every river is his altar, every glass of water, a prayer, every tide, a hymn, every crossing, a ritual. Oceanus is not about conquest. He is not about vengeance. He is about continuation, flow, distance, mystery. He does not speak, because he does not need to. He surrounds, and so he endures, not as a ruler, but as a rhythm, not as a name, but as a presence, not as a god, but as the place where gods begin, and where they are forgotten. She was not thunder, nor shadow, nor flame. She was the quiet between seasons, the softness in air before it rains. When Tethys was born of Gaia and Uranus, the world did not tremble. It breathed. Her siblings raged, fought, claimed dominions and destinies, but she did not rise with a weapon in hand. She simply moved steadily, quietly where she was needed. She was not silence, but harmony. She did not conquer the world. She nurtured it. When Oceanus began his slow, eternal path around the earth's edge, Tethys was not far behind. She did not ask where he was going. She did not demand space of her own. Instead, she flowed beside him, not as an echo, but as an answer. Oceanus encircled the world. Tethys gave it life. Together, they created the waters of the world not through violence, but through union. Tethys did not give birth in pain or fire. Her children came forth like springs from stone, like clouds from breath. The Oceanids were her daughters, soft-voiced, radiant, each one a ripple of grace. The Potamoi were her sons' rivers, with tempers and dreams, carving paths through the land as they grew. Tethys never named herself their queen. She was simply their source. There are no great myths of Tethys, hurling mountains, or cursing kings. She did not throw bolts of power, nor was she dragged into the wars of her brothers. But every god and mortal who drank from a stream, who washed in the river, who prayed for rain, they all knew her, even if they did not speak her name. When the world changed, when Cronus raised the sickle, when Uranus fell, when Zeus was hidden, and gods were devoured, Tethys remained. She did not rebel, nor did she submit. Her place was not in the sky, nor in Tartarus. It was in the invisible rhythms that kept the world alive, while gods destroyed it. When the war between Titans and Olympians raged, and Oceanus stepped aside, so did she. But not because she was afraid, because war was not her language. She healed. She gave. She connected. Tethys was the goddess of the nourishing water, not the wave that crashes, but the stream that feeds, the cloud that drifts, the mist that kisses crops at dawn. She ruled no palace, wore no crown, but everything that grew, everything that lived, owed something to her hands. When Hera, queen of Olympus, grew troubled by her husband's rage, when the palace of the gods trembled with suspicion and fury, it was not Gaia she turned to, not Rhea, not even her own brothers and sisters. It was Tethys, far at the edge of the world, at the quiet home where Oceanus still flowed. Tethys received Hieronaut with judgment, but with open arms. This moment, mentioned briefly in myth, speaks volumes. Hera, proud and sharp, did not seek power or answers. She sought comfort, and Tethys gave it. She always gave. Even after the Titans fell, and the Olympians claimed their thrones, Tethys remained untouched. She did not fall into shadow, nor fade into exile. She simply continued. The clouds still formed. The rivers still ran. The trees still drank. Her children were everywhere. Tethys was not worshipped in temples, not because she was forgotten, but because she was too essential to be isolated. She could not be confined to stone or image. She was the flow within all things, the moisture in breath, the salt in tears. In later centuries, poets would try to define her. They called her the goddess of nursing, of streams, of rain clouds. But their words fell short, because Tethys was not a role. She was the condition of life. To be alive, in any form, was to have passed through her, not in birth, but in continuation. She was not loud, but she was lasting. Long after names faded from marble, and temples cracked beneath the weight of forgotten worship, Tethys remained, not in memory, but in function. In every rainfall that nourished a field, in every drop of dew that clung to a sleeping leaf, in every trickle of water that shaped stone without force, over years, over centuries, she was not seen, but she was felt. Even the gods could not live without her. Their ambrosia may have been divine, but their world was held together by the gentle cohesion she offered. Clouds gathered because she willed them to. Springs emerged where she softened the earth. Rivers did not rage until they had first flowed gently under her guidance. There was power in that quiet shaping and ancient, maternal force that did not break, but nourished. Mortals never sacrificed to Tethys in fear. They didn't fear her. They needed her. They felt her when their wells ran dry. They prayed for her when crops curled from thirst. They thanked her when the rains returned, not with grand ceremonies, but with offerings of bread, of water poured back into the soil, of gratitude murmured over harvests. That was her altar, the land itself. Unlike so many of her siblings, Tethys was never bound, never punished, never overthrown. She did not battle her fate, nor was she consumed by it. She accepted the world as it moved, and she moved with it. When the names of Titans were whispered in fear or fury, hers was spoken with warmth. Tethys, they said, was not like the others. Her legacy was not carved into myth through grand tales, or betrayals, or wars. It was lived through every daughter. who poured water for a sick child, through every shepherd who followed the river upstream, through every mother who sang lullabies while clouds drifted past a window. She embodied connection. The rivers she birthed connected mountain to valley, forest to sea. The clouds she formed connected sky to field, drought to bloom. Her essence was in every bond that sustained life, and her presence was never intrusive. She did not force herself into stories. She supported them. Some myths place her at the edge of the world, where Oceanus flows into silence, a distant realm, unreachable by mortals. But that's a misunderstanding. Tethys was not distant. She was within. She was the soft presence inside. Every life-giving thing. The hidden warmth in the earth. The breath that cooled fire. The sip of water that kept a weary traveler from falling. She did not need a throne because she had something greater. Permanence. Even when Olympus forgot the names of Titans. Even when Zeus thundered, and Poseidon claimed the seas, and Hades sealed the underworld, Tethys was still necessary. They ruled their realms. She made them livable. In some traditions, her name fades, and other water goddesses rise. But they are not replacements. They are echoes. Refractions of a greater, quieter truth that began with her. Every nymph that tends a river, every spirit that dances in mist, they are her descendants, her daughters. Her breath made visible. Tethys was not a storm. She was the pause that follows. She was not a flood. She was the stream after it recedes. She was not the ocean's roar, but the gentle lap against the shore that stays when all else is gone. Her story is not one of rise and fall. It is one of presence, of persistence, of the sacred nature of care. In a world where gods often sought power, Tethys remained the embodiment of something far rarer, balance, and so she endures, without needing to be remembered, because she is still here, in the rain that soaks the earth, in the water that rests on your tongue, in the bond between all things that live. She flows, before the sun had a name, before the moon began to rise and fall, before the earth had shadows to cast there was light, not the kind that dances through leaves, or burns through morning mist, but a more ancient flame, a light that did not warm, but revealed. It shined without needing to be seen. It exposed all things without judgment, and once it touched the world, nothing could hide again. That light was Hyperion. He was not the sun. That would come later, through his sun. He was not dawn, or dusk, or the glow of stars. He was the force behind all of them, the impulse for light, the first breath of radiance. Hyperion did not rule with thunder or command with flame. He watched, and in his gaze, the world came into focus. When Gaia gave birth to the Titans with Uranus, the sky was thick with silence. Each child was a force mountain, ocean, memory, hunger, but Hyperion emerged as something else entirely. Where others clawed and carved, he lifted. Where others dug into the ground or rushed into the sea, he rose upward. His presence was not loud. It was exact, piercing, eternal. Hyperion meant he who goes above. But he was more than height. He was clarity. He was awareness. He was the line between shadow and truth. The Titans were many things: cruel, noble, tragic, but only one of them burned with the need to illuminate. From the moment he opened his eyes, the world flinched. Because to be seen is not always a gift. Some truths are comfortable in the dark. Some desires prefer not to be named. But Hyperion did not ask. He simply looked, and in that gaze, the shape of things revealed itself. He did not speak often, and when he did, his voice came slowly, like a sunrise that forgets how to stop, long, deliberate, and unflinching. He spoke in truths, but never used them as weapons. Still, his silence was not peace, it was pressure, the kind that builds in the air before lightning strikes. He was not feared because he was cruel. He was feared because he saw everything. His siblings didn't understand him. Oceanus flowed beyond reach. Cronus claimed the sky. Coups chased. knowledge through riddles and echoes. But Hyperion stood apart, alone, but not lonely, separate, but not severed. He didn't demand obedience, nor did he crave followers. He existed above those things. When the first great betrayal unfolded, when Cronus took the blade from Gaia and turned it against their father, Hyperion did not interfere. He did not shout in horror, nor cheer in triumph. He simply watched. He did not condone the act, but he recorded it, not in writing, but in memory. He would remember it forever. Every scream, every drop of Uranus's blood, every shift in the air as the world cracked open. He carried those memories like light, trapped in stone. He would never use them, but he would never forget them. Hyperion had a sister. They, radiant and composed, whose name meant sight or divine splendor. Of all his siblings, she was the only one he truly sanned, the only one who saw him back. Not just his form, but his intention. She did not flinch under his gaze. She welcomed it. Not because she was without fear, but because she, too, understood the weight of vision. They did not fall in love the way mortals do. There were no stolen glances, no aching touches. There was recognition, alignment, like two beams of light crossing paths in the void. They did not collide. They illuminated each other. Their union was not one of power, but of purpose. And from that purpose came 3 children who would define the heavens: Helios, the sun, blinding and proud; Selene, the moon, silver-eyed and sorrowful; Eos, the dawn, ever reborn and never complete. Each one a fragment of their father's essence, shaped into a cycle the world could understand. But none of them were Hyperion. They were moments of light. He was the reason light existed at all. He taught them what he could: how to rise, how to fall, how to arc with precision and never falter. He watched as Helios traced the sky, as Selene drifted through night, as Eos painted the world in beginnings that never stayed. He did not hold them close. He did not ask for gratitude. He simply gave. Light does not demand love. It only shines. But even light fades. When the Titanomachy came, and the sky cracked again, this time not by Cronus's hand, but by his son's, Hyperion knew what was coming. He saw it long before it began. Not in visions, not in prophecy, in patterns, in truths. The children of Cronus were not content with their father's order, nor should they have been. Hyperion had seen what came of stillness. He knew that power, when gripped too tightly, turns to dust. Zeus would rise, and when he did, everything old would fall. Hyperion did not fight out of loyalty to Cronus. He fought because he knew that light must be tested, that vision must face resistance, that even clarity must pass through fire. He stood on the battlefield, not with rage, but with precision. His attacks were not wild, they were surgical. Where he struck, blindness followed. Where he moved, shadow fled. His presence on the field was not that of a soldier, but of a sun suddenly risen in the middle of night. The Olympians feared him. Even Zeus, young and burning with ambition, turned his eyes when Hyperion passed. There was no shame in that. Number 1 looks directly into truth and stays unchanged. But Hyperion could not win. Not because he lacked power, but because he belonged to a world that was ending. The future did not need light that watched. It needed light that acted. Helios, his son, would replace him. Not in silence, but in blaze, in movement, in fire. And so Hyperion fell. Not in a blaze of glory, not in a scream. He dimmed. He dimmed not because he was defeated, but because his time was over. Hyperion did not scream when he was bound. He did not rage when his light was eclipsed. He accepted the fall in the same way he had accepted the rise, with stillness, with comprehension, with eyes open, because he knew. He had always known. They took him to Tartarus alongside the others, those who had grasped at power with clawed hands and broken hearts. But even in chains, even in shadow, Hyperion glowed faintly, not with heat, but with memory, the memory of a time before time, of a light that could not be named, a vision so ancient it had no beginning. Tartarus could not hold him completely, not because he escaped, but because parts of him had never been there to begin with. Light, after all, travels, it refracts, it fragments. The moment Hyperion fell, his legacy scattered across the sky, in the burning eyes of Helios, his will to illuminate, in the silent glide of Selene, his quiet contemplation, in the blush of Eos, his eternal beginning. They would not remember him as he was, not fully. The Olympians had no use for memory. They renamed the sun, they redrew the sky, they retold the stories, until Hyperion became just a name in a list, a footnote, a shadow behind a brighter flame. But the truth lingered sometimes. In the hours before dawn, when the sky is neither night nor day, mortals feel something shift, a hush in the air, a pause in the breath of the world. They call it calm, they call it beauty, but it is Hyperion, watching, not judging, just witnessing, because even now, he endures. Not as a god, not as a name, as an idea, that there is something above us, that clarity exists, that truth, even when buried, still shines. You cannot build a temple to Hyperion, you cannot offer him gold or prayer, but when you open your eyes to something you've long ignored, when you finally see what has always been there, that moment is his altar. He does not ask for worship, only awareness, and so he becomes eternal in the only way that matters. Not through thrones, not through power, but through perception. The Titans of old rose in fury and fell in chains. But Hyperion's fall was different. He did not lose himself. He became part of the world in a new way. No longer watching from above, but living in the moments when truth pierces through habit, when clarity breaks routine. Every time a person understands something deeply for the first time, Hyperion rises again, not visibly, but undeniably. There are stories that vanish, and there are stories that become invisible. Hyperion's tale was never erased, it simply faded into the light it had created. Because once something becomes everything, it no longer needs to be spoken aloud. Hyperion was not remembered through verses and votives. He was remembered through the sun that rose every morning, through the light that touched every field, through the shadows that retreated, slowly, at his passing. The poets tried. He named him. Homer echoed him in the vastness of Helios. Later thinkers, philosophers, and mystics wondered where the true light began. Helios was the sun, then, who had kindled that fire. They looked backward, further than the Olympians allowed. They found Hyperion, not in temples, but in concepts. They called him the father of perception, the lens of divine understanding. Not a god to be served, but a principle to be grasped. His name became synonymous with brilliance, not the brilliance of pride, but of realization. The sudden insight, the blinding clarity, the moment when a veil is lifted not from the eyes, but from the soul. And yet, it was never enough, because Hyperion had never been interested in being understood. He had been interested in seeing, and so he became the quiet watcher in every myth, where truth is found too late, in every tale, where hubris meets its end, where revelation comes at a cost, where the thing hidden in shadow finally steps into the light. He was there, unseen, in the folds of Icarus' wings, in the mirror Perseus held to Medusa's gaze. In the moment Oedipus realized the truth, he was not the cause of their fates, but he was the witness. The reminder that to see clearly is to risk pain, and yet, it is always better than blindness. The gods of Olympus, for all their thunder and celebration, were not creatures of vision. They were creatures of action, of impulse, of control. But Hyperion was never about control. He was about perspective. That is why Zeus never trusted him. Not truly. Even bound in Tartarus, Hyperion's silence was louder than prophecy. He had seen the father fall, then the sun rise, and he knew another would come. Not because of oracles, but because all light eventually casts new shadows. Zeus could not silence that knowledge, so he buried it. He taught the world that Helios was the sun, and nothing came before, but in forgotten shrines, in fragments of pottery, in half-burnt scrolls. The name remained Hyperion, not as a threat, as a reminder. There is something sacred in being observed, and something terrifying. The fear that nothing can be hidden, the comfort that nothing is ignored. This is what Hyperion offers. Even now, his children rule the sky in turns. Day, night, dawn. The rhythm is theirs, but the reason behind it, the stillness that holds it all together, that is him. He is the silence before speech, the eye behind the flame, the light that remains, even when the source is lost. Hyperion does not return in fire. He returns in the moment a person closes their eyes, then opens them again, and sees something different. Something they hadn't noticed, something that had always been there, waiting. He returns in the questions that wake us in the night, in the clarity that comes after grief, in the sudden knowledge that a truth has been staring at us for years, and we've only just noticed. He does not need form. He does not need name. He needs only one thing, for you to look, and in that looking, he lives again. There is a quiet truth at the core of all myth. Some beings are not meant to be understood, only felt. Hyperion was one of them. He was never a god of stories, of epics, or of conquest. His myth was not one of lovers betrayed, or enemies slain. He had no serpents to fight, no lovers to steal, no temples to demand sacrifice. He was not born for drama. He was born for illumination, and that, perhaps, is why he vanished from the myths of men, because mortals crave stories that burn and scream, stories of war, desire, revenge. But Hyperion offered none of those. He offered stillness. He offered perception. He offered the unbearable weight of seeing the world as it truly is. He asked nothing, and so they stopped telling his tale, but that doesn't mean it ended, because every morning, before Helios begins his climb, there is a moment brief, barely noticed, where the light touches the edge of the world and reveals everything just as it is. No shadows, no lies, no angles, just truth. That moment is Hyperion, not as a being, but as a presence. He exists now in the way silence exists in music, not in the notes, but between them. The space that allows the melody to breathe, the gap that makes the sound mean something. He exists in the way the sky brightens before the sun is visible, in the gold that lines the edge of a cloud, in the glint of understanding that flashes across someone's eyes, the moment they recognize a truth they've long denied. Hyperion is no longer a titan. He is a condition, the condition of seeing clearly, even when it hurts. He is the moment before denial is shattered, the breath before realization, the pause before we speak the truth that changes everything. That is his eternity, not as ruler, not as exile, but as awareness itself. And in that way, he never needed worship. He simply needed to be remembered, not in name, in experience. That is where his myth truly lives, not in books, in you. She was not loud. She did not conquer. She did not command the earth to open, or the sky to fall. They moved like a whisper behind the eyes, a shimmer in the corner of vision, a brilliance that made no sound but could not be ignored. She was not the light itself, she was its meaning. She was why we look toward the light, why we find beauty in the flame, in the stars, in the eyes of those we love. Born of Gaia and Uranus, like her brothers and sisters, Rhea was not given a throne or a domain at first. She did not pull mountains from the ground like Rhea. She did not surge into the seas like Oceanus. She did not reach upward into the firmament like Hyperion. She simply existed in her presence. Things became beautiful, not because she touched them, but because she revealed them. There was vision, not the act of seeing, but the essence of what is seen. She turned the world from shape to color, from mass to majesty. When she looked at the sky, it was not just sky, it was vastness. When she beheld the sea, it shimmered, not because the water changed, but because she allowed it to be seen as more than substance. As wonder. There is a difference between knowing something is there and feeling that it matters. Rhea was that difference, and the other gods, though powerful, did not understand her. They saw her as distant, too quiet, too soft, but they missed the truth, that their own greatness was often only visible through her. When she stood beside Hyperion, the air changed, not just in brightness, but in depth. They were not lovers in the way mortals imagine. They did not touch to claim, they aligned to reveal. Where Hyperion provided illumination, they gave it context. She taught light to mean something. She showed it how to curve, how to color, how to glisten. From their union came 3 children, Helios, the sun, Selene, the moon, and Eos, the dawn, each radiant, each beloved, but none of them carried her gentleness. Helios scorched, Selene wept, Eos longed. Only Rhea had balance. When Helios rode his chariot across the sky, mortals worshipped the light, but it was they who taught them to revere what they saw in it. When Selene bathed the night in silver, it was Rhea's grace that made the darkness tender. When Eos painted the horizon in rose and gold, it was Rhea's sense of beginning that touched the hearts of those who watched. She never claimed credit, she never needed to. Rhea was not worshipped in great temples. She had no cults that roared her name across mountaintops. She did not demand offerings, nor did she punish those who forgot her. Her power was not in being remembered, but in being felt. You could forget Rhea's name and still live inside her gift, because beauty does not need a name to exist. It only needs to be seen. She was often associated with gold, silver, and gemstones, not because she craved wealth, but because these were the substances that caught the light best. These were the materials that reflected her presence most faithfully. They shimmered, they dazzled, they awed, and in that awe, mortals felt something beyond themselves. That moment, the breath caught in the chest, the stillness that follows, astonishment, that was her. 2. Rhea precious metals were not currency. They were mirrors for the divine. Gold was not valuable because it was rare, but because it remembered light. It held it, it echoed it, and so, in time, kings would wear crowns, not just to signify power, but to imitate radiance. They wanted to be seen as more than men. They wanted to borrow a fraction of Rhea's vision, but she did not give her favor freely, not out of spite. She had no interest in punishment. She simply withheld herself when beauty was used without reverence, when light was twisted to blind rather than to reveal, when gold was used to enslave instead of elevate. In those places, they have faded, not because she was weak, but because truth cannot live in pretense, and they was truth wrapped in light. As the age of Titans waned and the Olympians rose, Rhea stepped back, not because she was overpowered, but because she had already given the world what it needed. She had taught it how to see, and her children Helios, Selene, Eos would carry that torch forward, not always gently, but with presence. Still, there were those who remembered, in the way a painter holds color, in the way a jeweler breathes before cutting a perfect gem, in the way a poet describes the light in someone's eyes. They don't speak her name, but she's there, always, just behind the surface. In every act of creation that begins with wonder, in some later myths, it disappears entirely. She's replaced, forgotten, folded into other figures. Her name is given to lesser roles, her meaning diluted. But that is the way of gods who do not scream. The world forgets what doesn't demand attention. But forgetting a name is not the same as erasing an essence. They became the silence inside. Beauty, the reason we look again. The thing we can't quite describe, but always notice. In every golden sunset, she lingers. In every moonlit reflection, she waits. In every morning light that breaks across sleeping eyes and stirs them awake, she smiles. Not because she is pleased, but because she is present. That is her nature. She does not need you to believe in her. She only needs you to see. Let me know when you're ready to continue Chapter 7. We'll explore how Thea's vision shaped mortal perception, her connection to divination and prophecy, and why beauty itself is a form of sacred knowledge. Zeptat, say Slusby ChatGPT. Sight was sacred to Thea, not just the ability to look, but the power of what is seen. In the old myths, it was said that she gave vision not only to mortals, but to the very gods themselves. A god might hold thunder, or sea, or sky, but without Thea, they could not see what they ruled. She was the clarity that made power aware of itself. Without her, even Olympus would have been blind. Her domain was not prophecy in the way of oracles and riddles. She did not speak in cryptic verses or shape the future with veiled warnings. Her gift was older, simpler. She gave the kind of vision that cuts through illusion, not to show what will be, but to make clear what is. In this way, she was feared by those who thrived on lies. Not because she would punish them, but because her presence made deceit impossible. Thea's sight was not just external. She saw into things, into people, into motives, into meanings, and she did not flinch. She never turned away from ugliness or beauty. She allowed both to be seen. She was not here to comfort. She was here to clarify. And that, perhaps, was her most divine quality. Because clarity is not always kindness. To see something clearly is to face it fully, without the mask, without the excuse. They offered no protection from the truth, only the strength to look at it. In ancient times, the first seers and wise women would speak her name in silence before gazing into pools of still water or polished obsidian. Not because they asked her to show the future, but because they needed her to help them see the present. Truly, deeply, without distortion, she became the unspoken mother of all acts of perception, of art, of reflection, of realization. She is the moment a sculptor sees the statue hidden in the stone, the instant a philosopher feels the veil between thoughts lift, the heartbeat in which a person, looking at themselves in a mirror, truly sees their own eyes for the first time. These are her temples, not buildings, moments, not altars, awareness. And though her body may have faded from myth, her essence never left. You see her in the gold leaf that adorns the edges of sacred books, in the gems that mark the eyes of forgotten statues, in the glittering reflection of sunlight on water that makes a child pause and stare. They lives wherever vision becomes reverence, where seeing is not just an act, but a form of devotion. They'd never needed worship. She never asked to be queen. She didn't raise her voice in war, or carve her name into the mountains. Her power was not in dominion, but in definition. She was not the goddess of things, but the one who made things seen. And in a world of chaos, hunger, and violence, that was a power far greater than conquest. Her children carried her forward, though they did not always know it. Helios, proud and unwavering, scorched the sky with his radiance. Mortals feared him, prayed to him, blamed him for drought, and praised him for harvest. But it was they who first taught him to rise without hesitation, to trace the world with purpose, to become a symbol of order, not just light. Selene, pale and mournful, drifted through night as the silent observer. She became the queen of the moon, a soft silver comfort to the lost and the lonely. But it was they who gave her that softness as weakness, but as strength. It was they who taught her to glow without burning, to watch without judging, to be presence itself. And Eos, restless and eternal, the goddess of the dawn, inherited Thea's hunger for beginnings. She painted each morning with colors that had never been seen before. She reached for the future with every sunrise. But it was they who whispered to her that every new light must come gently, or it will shatter what it tries to reveal, even when they have faded from the myths when her name was reduced to a lineage. Her story folded into others, she remained the source, the first spark behind the gold, the shimmer beneath the surface, the hush before revelation. In the war of Titans and Olympians, she did not raise a weapon, not out of fear, but because her power could not be held in hands. What could Zeus do with a goddess of sight? What chains could bind perception? She could be ignored, forgotten, left out of the stories. But she could not be destroyed, because every time someone looks up and feels awe, every time a light catches just right, and the world feels momentarily holy, every time something once hidden is finally seen, Rhea is there, watching. Not in the way of Hyperion, far and still, with the weight of cosmic silence, but closely, quietly, inwardly. Her divinity was never about distance, it was about intimacy, about the closeness between what is and what is understood, about the flicker that turns sensation into meaning. The world may not know her name anymore, but it knows her presence, because without they, there is no wonder, and without wonder, there are no gods. He was not the strongest, he was not the loudest, his voice did not shake mountains, and his gaze did not blind. When the world was young, and the Titans were born, Cos entered the cosmos like a question, quiet, deliberate, and dangerous in its depth. Where others took up the element sky, sea flame, Cos took up something far more elusive, thought. Not emotion, not belief, not instinct, thought. The kind that spirals inward and outward at once, the kind that shatters assumptions and never lets you rest, the kind that makes gods wonder what came before them. He was the Titan of intellect, of questioning, of the great axis on which the sky turned. While his brothers sought dominion over land and wave, Cos sought something far more enduring, knowledge that could not be undone. He did not shout for attention. He did not make war to prove himself. But when he spoke, even Cronus paused, because Cos had a way of cutting through things, not with blades but with insight. And insight, properly wielded, is more dangerous than any weapon. His domain was the celestial axis, imaginary to mortals, but absolutely real to him, an invisible line around which the heavens turned, a concept that explained the stars, that gave the night sky structure, that anchored the universe to meaning. And in that idea, Cos found his power. While others ruled with their hands, Cos ruled with his mind. He did not chase after dominion, but was given a place of respect by Cronus when the old order fell. Not because Cronus loved him, no. Cronus trusted almost no one, but because even Cronus knew he needed someone who could think clearly, who could see beyond the present, who could trace consequences through generations. And so, Cos became a kind of counselor, an advisor, the mind in the dark room where strategies were born. His advice was rarely comforting, but always correct. Some feared him, not because he was cruel, but because he understood them too well. He could read their fears before they spoke. He could unravel their motives without accusation. He knew what they wanted sometimes before they did. And worst of all, he knew what they would become. Cos never told lies. He never needed to. Truth was his blade, and it was sharper than anything forged in flame. But Cos did not live only in logic. He was not cold. He was not detached. His mind burnt not with detachment, but with hunger. He wanted to understand everything, the stars, the turning of the seasons, the movements of power, the origin of gods. He was married to Phoebe, the Titaness of prophetic radiance, a union not of opposites, but of complements. Where Phoebe saw what would be, Cos grasped what was. Together, they formed the bridge between present and future. One questioning, one illuminating, one piercing, one revealing. From them came two daughters, Leto and Asteria. Leto, the serene and shadowed mother of Apollo and Artemis, Hysteria, the starry one, who fled Olympus and became a wandering goddess of dreams and oracles. Through them, Ku's legacy passed into the Olympian age, not with the brute force of Cronus, nor the flame of Hyperion, but with the inheritance of mind and mystery. Kus did not fear the rise of the Olympians. He had seen it coming. He had seen it before anyone else, not through visions, but through logic, through consequence. He watched Zeus rise from obscurity and knew, with a kind of terrible certainty, that the reign of Titans was ending. And still, he did not run. He did not try to stop it, because Kus understood something most Titans could not bear to face: inevitability. Some say he argued with Cronus in their final days, that he begged his brother to change course, to prepare for the future, to seek alliance instead of war. But Cronus was deaf to anything that sounded like doubt, especially from someone who never raised his voice. And so Kus was ignored. The war came, the gods rose, and Kus, the clearest mind among the Titans, was dragged into the conflict, with a heart already mourning what he knew they would lose. He fought, but not like the others. Kus did not rain fire or summon quakes. He fought with strategy, with precision, with tactics that baffled even the Olympians. His mind was a battlefield, and on it, he delayed the inevitable longer than any other. Some say he devised illusions that misled Zeus himself, that he created false fronts in the war, buying time for the Titans to regroup, that his thoughts moved faster than light, and his plans rippled through the fabric of myth-like echoes in a hall of mirrors. But even Kus could not stop fate. When the war was lost, and the Titans were bound in chains, Kus went without resistance, not because he had surrendered, but because he had foreseen this too. He knew his part in the old order had ended, and he knew that even in defeat, ideas survive. Let me know when you're ready for part 2 of chapter 8, where we explore Kus' long imprisonment, the haunting echo of intellect in Tartarus, his legacy through Leto and Hysteria, and why some ideas are too sharp to ever die. They say Tartarus is a prison of silence, of darkness, of chains that bite deeper than steel. But for Kus, the worst torment was not the cold, nor the weight, nor even the endless echo of time. It was the stillness of the mind. For a being, made of thought, who lived in the motion of the heavens and the dance of consequence, Tartarus was a cage not around the body, but around the intellect. The other Titans screamed, raged, begged for freedom or revenge. But Kus remained quiet, not out of serenity, out of necessity. He was conserving thought the way one might conserve breath underwater. In Tartarus, to think was to suffer. To imagine was to remember, and to remember was to realize, again and again, that he had been right. He replayed the fall in his mind, not as lamentation, but as data. He traced the fault lines of their hubris, the moment Cronus refused his counsel, the patterns of pride that doomed the old order. And then he turned his thoughts forward not to escape, but to understand what would come next. Because Kus was never just a titan of intellect, he was a compass, a celestial axis, unmoved by the chaos around him. Even in chains, his mind turned, and it was in that turning that something extraordinary happened. He began to see through the prison, not with eyes, with thought. Ideas are slippery things. They do not obey the rules of stone and steel. They move, they infect, they echo, and even from the lowest depths, Kus' thoughts began to seep upward, like warmth from a hidden fire, not as rebellion, not as vengeance, but as influence. Some say he reached his daughters not in voice, but in intuition, that Leto, when she wandered pregnant and hunted by Hera, felt her father's calm in her bones, that it was his logic that guided her to Delos, the floating island that would anchor her fate, that when she gave birth to Apollo and Artemis, the twin flames of prophecy and the hunt, It was Ku's blood that burned brightest in their intellect, their precision, their need to know. Others claim it was Asteria who bore his mind most fully, the Titaness of falling stars, of nighttime visions, of truths half seen in dreams. She fled Olympus by turning into a star and diving into the sea, an act of refusal, of quiet defiance. But she did not vanish. She became the mother of Hecate, the goddess of boundaries, magic, and crossroads. And in that lineage, Ku's sharp perception endured. Hecate was not loud. She was not worshipped on mountain peaks or in golden halls, but she knew the spaces between things, the thresholds, the hidden logic that underlies all transformation. That was Ku's, alive again, through mystery. In time, Ku's became less a figure and more a presence in myth, a whisper behind the thoughts of scholars, a nudge in the dreams of strategists. His name was seldom spoken, but his questions remained. Why does the sky turn? What lies at the center? What happens when power refuses to adapt? The Olympians ruled, but they did not end doubt. Zeus, in all his thunder, could not banish inquiry. Athena, born of thought herself, bore traces of him in her war-born wisdom. Hermes, with his tricks and cleverness, echoed Ku's in the way he bent truth into function. Even Apollo, god of prophecy, carried Ku's in the structure of his logic, the way he demanded clarity from chaos. Ku's had lost the war, but he had never sought victory. He had sought understanding, and that, unlike thrones, cannot be taken. It spreads, quietly, unstoppably, like light through cracks in marble. In some later stories, those not often told, Ku's escapes Tartarus, not by breaking his chains, but by outlasting them. Ideas, after all, cannot be caged forever. They decay their prisons from the inside out. In these tales, Ku's returns not to challenge Olympus, but to teach in secret, disguised, diminished, yet unmistakable in the way he speaks, in the way he sees. A mentor in shadows, a stranger at the edge of battle, whispering to generals. A traveler whose questions make kings lose sleep. These stories are not canonical, but they feel true. Because even now, when we look up at the night sky and trace the axis around which it turns, we honor him. When we study the causes beneath the surface, the systems behind the chaos, the meaning inside the madness, we walk in his steps. And when we ask, what have we missed? We echo his most sacred impulse. Ku's was never loud, but neither is gravity, and still, everything turns round it. She did not shout. She shimmered. When Phoebe stepped into the world, it was not with force, but with presence, a silver warmth that touched without burning, a glow that made others feel illuminated not by her, but by something already within themselves. She was the Titaness of radiance, yes, but not the sun's blinding blaze, or the fire's devouring flame. Her light was the one that lingers, that makes silence sacred, that draws the gaze upward in wonder. Born of Gaia and Uranus, she was one of the 12 great Titans, and like her siblings, she was shaped not only by her element, but by the space it occupied. She was the Titaness of prophetic clarity, not raw foresight like Themis, not cryptic visions like Asteria, but a clarity that revealed the nature of things. She saw not just what would happen, but what it meant. She saw the story under the surface, the emotional truth behind events. And unlike many seers who grew bitter from the burden of knowing, Phoebe never recoiled. She welcomed it. Her presence was cool, but never cold, serene, but not distant. To stand near her was to feel understood, not in the way of being analyzed, but in the way of being seen and accepted entirely. She offered no judgment, only light. Some Titans found her unnerving, because clarity is not always comfortable. Phoebe saw through masks, through bluster, through pride. And in the age of Titans, an age of ego, ambition, and grandeur, that made her dangerous. But she never used her vision to manipulate. That wasn't her way. She didn't twist fates. She simply spoke what she saw, and let others reveal themselves by how they responded. When Cus first met her, it was not with fireworks or conquest. It was with quiet recognition. Two minds, tuned differently, but harmoniously. Where he saw patterns, she saw meanings. Where he asked questions, she held answers not as weapons, but as gifts. They did not complete each other. They complicated each other in the best way. Their union was not born of necessity, but of curiosity, of mutual gravity. Together, they created a lineage of mystery and wisdom. Leto, the still and shadowed mother of divine duality. Asteria, the fallen star, who carried dreams into the sea. Through their daughters, Phoebe's radiance flowed forward into the Olympian age, not loudly, not directly, but as an undercurrent. But in the early days, Phoebe held more than motherhood. She held the sacred seat at the navel of the world Delphi long before Apollo claimed it. The oracle of Delphi was hers. It was not yet a grand temple, nor did it yet sing with Pythian hymns. It was quiet, intimate, a cave, a breath, a place where the world exhaled mystery, and Phoebe was its keeper. She did not command it, she listened to it, because prophecy, in its truest form, is not something you take. It's something you receive. The earth whispered, and Phoebe answered, not with commands, but with clarity. People came not to learn the future, but to understand the present. They left not with destinies, but with direction. And Phoebe remained, year after year, her glow never dimming, her serenity never cracking. She did not seek a crown, she did not build empires, but the gods themselves would later fight over the place she once tended in silence. Because when power is confused, it seeks wisdom, and when it cannot create wisdom, it tries to own it. She left Delphi not in shame, not in exile, but in purpose. The world was shifting. The Titans were waning. The Olympians, bold and hungry, were rising like wildfire through the cosmos, where the Titans had ruled through balance, age, and element. The new gods ruled through assertion, through identity, through narrative. And in this new world, wisdom was not something you listened for, it was something you declared. Prophecy became spectacle. Oracles became mouthpieces. And the quiet clarity that Phoebe embodied began to fade from favor. Apollo wanted Delphi, but he did not take it by force. Even he, with all his pride and golden ambition, knew better than to challenge Phoebe openly. Instead, he came with charm, with reverence, with inherited right. He claimed lineage through Leto, her daughter, and in some versions of the myth, it was Phoebe herself who granted him Delphi, who willingly passed the gift of vision to the god who would soon become its brightest voice, not because she believed he deserved it, but because she saw what the world would become. Phoebe understood what many Titans did not, that to survive in the mythic memory, one must know when to step aside. That power clung to too tightly becomes destruction. That light, when hoarded, becomes fire, so she let go. But she did not disappear. She withdrew, quietly, into the background of myth, into the silver light that traces clouds, into the hush before revelation, into the soft voice inside those who are still enough to listen. Her presence lingered, not in temples, but in questions, not in thunder, but in intuition, and through Leto, her legacy deepened. Leto, who bore twins in shadow, who wandered the earth, rejected and reviled, who gave birth with no temple, no aid, no celebration, only endurance, only stillness. Leto did not rage, she did not plead, she endured. And in that endurance, the light of Phoebe gleamed, because Phoebe's vision had never been about dominance. It had always been about presence. To see, not to control, not to judge, but simply to see was her sacred gift, and it was that same quiet power that Leto gave to her children, Apollo, bright and burning with truth, and Artemis, shadowed and sharp with instinct, to gods born of clarity and wildness, to gods who could not be lied to, because they carried Phoebe's eyes beneath their divinity. In the myths that followed, Phoebe was rarely named, but she was never gone. Her radiance became a kind of mythic grammar, the way we tell stories of vision and fate, the way seers pause before speaking, the way oracles wrap truths in poetry, not to confuse, but to honor the depth of meaning. That is her, still guiding, still whispering, still holding the thread between what is seen and what is understood. In later philosophical traditions, especially among the Greeks who worshipped wisdom not just as divine, but as necessary, Phoebe became more than a Titan. She became a symbol of inner clarity, of perception that doesn't shout, of the sacred feminine that reveals without conquering. And perhaps this is why she survived in silence, because the world forgets names, but it remembers archetypes: the wise woman, the radiant guide, the calm in the storm. We see her in every mother who knows more than she says, in every healer who waits, listens, and only speaks when truth can be received, in every prophet whose eyes glow with something ancient, something vast and gentle, and utterly unshakable. That is Phoebe. She did not need to win. She did not need to rule, because she saw everything already, and that was enough. She did not vanish. She receded, as the Olympians rose, and the world of myth reshaped itself into new hierarchies and golden thrones. Tethys, the mother of rivers, the source of fresh water, the silent stream beneath all things, chose not to ascend, nor to fall. She simply flowed away, not out of fear, not out of resentment, but out of rhythm. Because Tethys understood something most gods did not: that presence is not always power, that to nourish is not to own, that to step back can be the most divine of acts. And so, as Zeus claimed the sky, and Poseidon seized the sea, and Hades burrowed into the earth, Tethys allowed her domain to return to the in-between places, to the overlooked, to the essential. The mountains still wept with her, the clouds still carried her name in silence. The rivers, though personified, anew still bore her blood. It is said in the oldest fragments of myth that when Hera was nursed as a child, it was Tethys who held her, that the queen of Olympus drank from the Titaness breast. And though Hera would later rise as a matron of command, law, and vengeance, part of her always remembered the softness of that moment, the pure flow of life through another's gift. That is the nature of Tethys. Even in withdrawal, she remained a source. When the war was done, and the Titans were cast into Tartarus, Tethys was spared. Why? No one agreed. Some say it was because she did not fight. Others say it was because the Olympians feared cursing the rivers, the rain, the wells, that to punish Tethys would be to punish the very veins of the world. And some, those with a deeper ear, say it was because she was never truly part of the war, that she belonged to something older than Titan or Olympian, that she was not a god of rule, but a principle of nature, and such principles cannot be overthrown. You can reject the sun and curse the night. You can question fate and wrestle war, but you cannot deny your need for water. The rivers do not care who sits on the throne. The rain does not ask who commands Olympus. They fall, they feed, they endure, and that was her secret. Some poets would later suggest that Tethys withdrew to the edge of the world with Oceanus, and there, the two kept the balance of the waters, that they moved around the earth like an endless belt, a current beneath the stars, that every new spring born from the rock, every mountain lake that forms without a name, every unknown stream flowing through a forgotten valley is still touched by her hand. There are myths that say sailors, those who dared to travel past the known seas, would sometimes see her, not a monstrous wave, not a sea beast, but a woman made of shimmer and flow, her hair like pouring silver, her arms outstretched. She would not speak, she would not strike, but when they passed through the warm waters of strange currents, when their thirst was quenched by rain in the middle of a desert voyage, they would whisper her name, not to beg, to thank, because Tethys did not demand sacrifice. She gave without asking, and so the world forgot her, because that is what the world often does to mothers who give without screaming. But her legacy did not disappear. The Oceanids, her daughters, spread throughout every myth and every land, from Metis, the goddess of cunning thought, to Styx, the sacred river of oaths, to Eurynome, the wide-drooling one who danced in the early dawn. Tethys' children became the fabric of the mythic ecosystem, and each carried a fragment of her nature: serenity, flow, intuition, generosity. Even in Homer's Iliad, Tethys is remembered not as a central figure, but as a refuge. When Achilles' mother Thetis, a sea-nymph descended from the Titan line, weeps for her son's fate, she goes to Tethys. She enters her hall beneath the ocean, where the ancient Titaness still resides, and Tethys comforts her not with answers, not with solutions, but with presence. That, too, is part of her mythology. She was a place of return, not a beginning, not an end, but the point at which cycles renew. When gods grew tired, when fate twisted too tight, when the myths themselves began to break under the weight of their violence, the characters turned only briefly to her, to the river, to the spring, to the soft place where life continues, regardless. In this way, Tethys became less a character and more a condition, the condition of being nourished, the condition of quiet endurance, the condition of not needing to be seen in order to matter. In later cosmologies, some even equated her with the primordial waters of life, the great, still sea, from which all gods were born. That may not be literally true, but it speaks to a deeper truth, that she was, in some way, always present at the root of things, because mythology is not just made of battles and betrayals, it is made of breath, of waiting, of flowing through one form into the next. That is what Tethys teaches us. She reminds us that not all power is loud, that not all legacies wear crowns, that sometimes the most vital gods are the ones whose names you forget to whisper until you're dying of thirst. Never ruled Olympus. She never challenged Zeus. She never demanded to be remembered, and yet, she still is. In every spring that breaks from stone, in every river that snakes through forest, in every cloud that blesses a parched field, she is still here, because water never dies, it just finds a new path. This chapter is devoted to Rhea, the Titaness of sight, divine light, and value. She, who gave brilliance to the world, not only through her radiance, but by imbuing meaning into beauty itself. Mother of the sun, moon, and dawn, Rhea was not simply a goddess of light. She was the force behind why we care about it. This chapter will be delivered in 2 maximum-length parts. As always, here is part 1 of chapter 11. She was not sunlight. She was the reason sunlight mattered to the mortals who looked skyward. She was invisible, unnamed, forgotten, but every time their eyes lingered on a sunset, every time they gazed into a gemstone and whispered of beauty, every time they called something precious, they were worshipping her without knowing it. Her name was Rhea, Titaness of divine sight, brilliance, and intrinsic value. She was not light, but the meaning of light, not vision, but the why behind it. She did not rule over things that shine. She made their shine matter. Where Hyperion, her consort, represented the mechanics of celestial bodies, how the sun moves, how the heavens turned, Rhea embodied the experience of those bodies. She was the awe that comes with illumination, the pull of the stars, the worth we place on light, not because it exists, but because it moves something in us. It is easy to overlook her in the stories. She does not wage war. She does not sit on thrones or fall from grace, but she is the mother of the sky's greatest jewels. From her union with Hyperion came 3 deities: Helios, the radiant sun god, who drags the chariot of light across the heavens; Selene, the serene goddess of the moon, who watches silently over night's secrets; Eos, the golden-winged dawn, who opens the gates of heaven each morning, with fingertips stained in pink and fire. Together, They represent the passage of light, morning, day, night. But it is they who birthed that cycle not as a function of time, but as a frame of wonder. In the early myths, before the gods formed courts and men built temples, it was believed that they gave not only radiance but value. She was the one who taught the world how to see, not just with eyes, but with meaning. Through her, gold became more than metal, gems became more than rock, light became more than warmth. She is the reason diamonds are sacred, the reason rubies bleed with symbolism, the reason kings crave what glitters, because they touched these stones, and in doing so, made them reflections of something divine. She taught us that some things glow because they are close to truth, and not just physical truth, but emotional, spiritual, existential truth. In some Orphic traditions, they is associated with the ether, the bright upper air that the gods themselves breathed. Not the wind, not the sky, but the light above it. The divine clarity that surrounds Olympus. This isn't just symbolic, it's theological. Ether was considered purer than air or fire. It was the essence of illumination. They, as the mother of light, was deeply tied to this realm, not as its ruler but as its source. This gives her a unique role in the Titan pantheon, because while many Titans represent forces of nature or realms of existence, Rhea represents a relationship to those forces. She is not just what we see, but why we care, why beauty hurts, why light moves us, why sight is more than function. It is emotion, memory, longing. To worship they was not to burn incense or build a temple. It was to pause before something beautiful, to feel the ache of a sunset, to stare into a sapphire and know, without words, that it means something. And in this, she became one of the most dangerous Titans of all, because true value is powerful. If you control what people value, you control what they fight for, what they die for, what they love. They never exploited this, but others would. Memory is not a mirror. It is not accurate. It is not neutral. It shapes you. And no one knew this more than Mnemosyne. Before there was history, before there was writing, before man learned to chisel symbols into stone, there was memory. And before memory had a name, there was Mnemosyne, Titaness of remembrance, mother of all muses, the silent force behind every myth ever spoken aloud. She was not loud. She did not shine, but her power was more enduring than fire, or lightning, or stone. Because memory decides what survives. To understand Mnemosyne is to understand that stories are not passive. They are sculptors. Every generation, every empire, every god who ever rose or fell owed their shape to her. She was born of Gaia and Uranus, like the others, but she stood apart. While her siblings embodied raw forces of nature, light, ocean, harvest, time. Mnemosyne embodied something more elusive, the retelling of those forces. She was not the storm, nor the sun, but the song about the storm, the poem about the sun. She was the voice in the dark that remembered the names of stars, the whisper that preserved the death of giants, the breath that made suffering sacred. In the beginning, she kept the memories of the Titans, their origins, their laws, their sacred rituals. She was the keeper of the old ways, not to enforce them, but to recall them, and in recalling them, give them power. Because a god forgotten is a god undone. Even the mightiest fall, if no one remembers their name. This was Mnemosyne's quiet dominion, the space between forgetting and myth. She held the line, preserved what mattered, filtered what did not. And when the Olympians rose, they did not destroy her. They needed her. For what is a new god without a past? What is Zeus without the tale of Cronus? What is Athena without her birth from a skull? What are heroes, temples, or justice, if no one remembers why they exist? Mnemosyne gave the gods their own stories, not as lies, but as scaffolding, so that the divine could have context, so that power could be traced, justified, worshipped, and then, one night 9 nights. To be exact, Zeus came to her, not to conquer, not to seduce by force. He came to ask for a gift, and what they created together was not a war, or a child, or a thunderclap. It was the Muses, 9 daughters, each a flame of divine creativity, Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, Clio of history, Erato of love poetry, Euterpe of music, Melpomene of tragedy, Polyhymnia of hymns, Terpsichore of dance, Thalia of comedy, Urania of astronomy. 9 spirits who would become the very breath of culture, not gods of nature, but goddesses of expression. The bridges between memory and art, between the past and the performance. And Mnemosyne, the mother of them all, smiled not because she had won, but because she had ensured continuity. She had made forgetting impossible in temples and theaters, in scrolls and songs. In the minds of philosophers and madmen, the Muses danced, and behind each of them stood their mother, not seen, not sung, but always felt. Because without Mnemosyne, nothing would be passed down, not love, not war, not wisdom. There would be no myth, no pantheon, no reason for any of this. She is the reason Homer could sing, the reason Orpheus could charm the stones, the reason you, now, know the name Zeus. Mnemosyne did not carry a sword. She wielded something far more dangerous, narrative. She understood that the past was never just what happened. It was what was retold, and what was retold became real, not factually, but mythically, spiritually, and, for the ancient world, theologically. To Mnemosyne, memory was not a filing system. It was sacred architecture, a temple built not of stone, but of moments. Each story a pillar, each name an altar, each myth a doorway between mortality and the divine. This is why her gift terrified even the Olympians, because while they may have ruled the world, she ruled how it would be remembered. What good is a victory if no one recalls it? What is a god's wrath without a tale to carry it through the centuries? Mnemosyne was the silent heartbeat under every myth. The reason why epics endure, the reason why a hero's last breath becomes immortal. She was not content to let the past rot. She curated it. Some whispered she could erase as easily as she could preserve, that she could unmake a legend simply by refusing to recall it, that her silence could kill a myth faster than any blade. Because, in the mythological cosmos, to be remembered is to exist, and she remembered everything, not just names and deeds, but the feelings behind them. She knew the fear Cronus felt when he heard his child would overthrow him. She remembered the cold silence between Gaia and Uranus before the sickle fell. She carried the weight of a million choices that shaped empires, lineages, and destinies, and she chose which ones were worth preserving. That was her true power. Selection. Memory is not an impartial god. It is a gardener. It prunes. It shapes. It decides which branches grow and which are cut. And Mnemosyne was the first to do this, not with cruelty, but with vision. She did not simply guard the past. She shaped it. In some traditions, her river flowed through the underworld parallel to Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Those who drank from Lethe lost all memory, but those who sought truth, real, soul-deep truth, were said to drink from Mnemosyne's waters. Philosophers and mystics believed that remembering was a path to divinity, that the soul had lived before, and to drink from Mnemosyne was to recover what was already known but forgotten. A remembrance of the soul's true self, of cosmic memory. To remember was to awaken. This is not metaphor. This was a theology, and Mnemosyne was its mother, her temple, if such a thing ever truly existed, was not built of stone and pillars, but of stories told in the hush of night, of songs sung to children, of epics carried across generations, of names whispered to stars. Even now, in our modern world, her breath is felt. She lives in memoirs and monuments, in anniversaries and eulogies. In the instinct to write things down, take photographs, pass on names. When we remember, we participate in her power, and when we forget, we lose something more than dato. We lose meaning. This was the tragedy Mnemosyne guarded against, because without memory, nothing matters. Without memory, there is no continuity, no identity, no context, only noise. She gave the gods their stories. She gave mortals their heritage. She gave the world its thread. Even today, as myths are retold in new voices, new mediums, new lands, her hand remains. You do not see her, but you are holding her every time you remember why something matters. He is the shadow you overlook, the blank space on the family tree, the name you read, then forget. Cronus. In the grand theater of Greek mythology, where gods hurl lightning and wrestle monsters, where fates are sung by poets and temples rise in devotion, Cronus barely whispers. He is not the storm, nor the sun, nor the sea. He is not worshipped. He is not feared. His stories are not told in firelight, and yet, he is there in every genealogy, in every list of primordial powers, in the very bones of the mythic world, because Greek mythology does not waste names. Every figure, no matter how silent, has weight. Cronus, though shrouded in mystery, is a pillar, literally, in ancient cosmology. He is one of the 4 Titans tasked with holding up the heavens, positioned at the celestial south. Imagine the cosmos as a great sphere, the earth surrounded by a rotating firmament of stars and divine currents. To keep this vast mechanism from collapsing, the Greeks imagined 4 cardinal supports: Cronus in the north, Iapetus in the west, Hyperion in the east, and Cronus in the south. But while his brothers shine with personality, Cronus, the mind, Hyperion, the light, Iapetus, the mortal wounder, Cronus, remains silent. He is the anchor point, the unseen load-bearing Titan. This silence is not a flaw. It is the point. Cronus represents the force of framework, of structure without glory, of what is necessary, but never praised. He is the constellation without a myth, the axis without a statue, the father of gods who surpass him. Because while Cronus himself is obscure, his children are not. By Eurybia, the hard-hearted daughter of Pontus and Gaia, Cronus fathered 3 gods who each represent forces of action: Astraeus, Titan of dusk and the stars, father of the winds and the planets; Pallas, Titan of warcraft and strength; Perses, Titan of destruction and dominion. Think about that. From a Titan of silence came 3 deities of movement, conflict, and cosmic rhythm. This is not contradiction. It is metaphor. Cronus, the stable base, gives rise to motion, the still point from which orbits begin. The unseen father who launches the storm. His line is not one of poetry, but of momentum, and perhaps this is why the myths say so little of him, because Cronus is not about story. He is the space where stories happen. He is the blank canvas, the stage, the invisible thread that binds stars into constellations. In this way, Cronus becomes more than a forgotten name. He becomes a symbol of roles unstable, of strength that does not shine, of the foundational forces that support but never demand. The ancients may not have told his tales, but they acknowledged him again and again in their genealogies. And in a mythos obsessed with lineage, to be named as a father is to be real. That alone places Cronus in the firmament of mythic architecture. Cronus did not walk into war. He was beneath it. While other titans took up arms in the Titanomachy, while Atlas strained against the sky and Cronus wielded his sickle, Cronus did not stand out in rebellion nor in loyalty. His place was already chosen, not as a warrior, but as a position, a southern pillar of the world, metaphysical and unyielding. But here's the key: in Greek cosmology, direction wasn't just geography, it was symbolic order. The South Cronus's domain was the axis, of celestial navigation. Sailors navigating by starlight would look to the south for guidance. Astronomers marked time by the movement of stars in the southern sky. Cronus, then, becomes more than a placeholder. He becomes the hinge between heaven and earth, the point from which time, orientation, and celestial rhythm are measured. He is not the clock. He is the axis the clock turns upon. Some traditions link his name, Kappa Rho, Iota G, Sigma, with the constellation Aries, the ram, and in ancient astrology, Aries marks the beginning of the zodiac, the first house, the point of emergence. This gives Cronus another hidden role, the initiator, not as a character in a myth, but as a cosmic principle. From him descends Astraeus, the god of dusk and the stars. Astraeus marries Eos, the dawn, and fathers the Anemoitha, for winds and the planetary gods. And what are winds and planets but navigators of space and time? Through this lineage, Cronus becomes the grandfather of motion itself. Not the storm, but the breath before it. Not the orbit, but the point it curves around. Not the story, but the moment before the first word is spoken. That silence, that pregnant, cosmic silence, is Cronus. This is what makes his absence so poetic. He is the blank page on which the myth is written. The space between stars, the invisible geometry that turns chaos into constellations. And maybe the Greeks didn't tell his stories not because he lacked them, but because he contained them, because some gods speak loudest by not speaking at all. In this light, Cronus becomes a metaphor for every unseen force in mythology, the foundations of Olympus, which are never praised, but hold everything up. The temple walls, unnoticed compared to statues, but without which nothing stands. The narrative structure, the shape of myth itself, on which drama is built. Cronus is every craftsman whose name history forgets, though their work defines a civilization. He is the architect, not the hero, the bracket, not the statue, the old name on a forgotten scroll, without whom the whole family tree collapses. In the end, Cronus was cast into Tartarus, along with his siblings, punished, not for defiance, but for existence, for being part of a regime too old to survive. There are no epics about his fall, no cries of vengeance or tragedy, and yet, something in the silence lingers. Because when a name is repeated for millennia, despite having no story, no temple, no Hemet, is not for nothing. Cronus endures because every myth needs a structure. Every cosmos needs a south. Every act of divine motion needs a still point to begin from. And for all his obscurity, Cronus gave the stars their order. He fathered the very rhythm by which gods mark their rise and fall. He laid the axis on which myth could turn, not to be remembered, but because it needed to be done. She did not need to shout. The truth came to her in silence. Phoebe, daughter of Gaia and Uranus, was not like the others. She did not command thunder, nor raise mountains. She did not hurl storms, or rule over oceans. Instead, her domain was more elusive, the gleam before knowledge, the shimmer of prophecy, the luster of truth, not yet spoken aloud. Her very name, Phoebe, means bright, shining, or radiant, but not in the harsh way of the sun, or the flicker of flame. Hers was a cool light, a lunar glow, a mental brilliance, and in a world of primordial violence, where gods were devouring their young, and time was bound in chains, she was the calm center, an embodiment of clarity in a storm of chaos. To call her simply a goddess of prophecy is not enough. Phoebe was the source of the Delphic current, the original intelligence that later made Delphi sacred, long before Apollo claimed the oracle. Long before mortals lined up with sacrifices and questions, the sacred stone of Delphi, the navel of the world, belonged to her. She held it, and it pulsed with knowledge. The ancients believed prophecy was not merely prediction, but remembrance, a kind of divine recalling of what always must happen. And Phoebe did not invent fate, but she saw it. She held it in her mind like a mirror, still polished, reflecting back what the future would unfold. In Orphic traditions, she was said to sit in deep contemplation, unmoving, undisturbed, because true foresight does not come in frenzy, it comes in quiet. In the stillness between thoughts, in the silence between what is and what will be. In that way, Phoebe's power resembled the moon, not just because of her later association with Artemis, but because the moon does not produce its own light. It reflects, it holds the glow of another, gently, and this, perhaps, is the secret of her prophecy. She did not generate fate. She reflected it. She did not command. She revealed. In myth, Phoebe does not rage. She does not go to war. She does not throw lightning or tear down kingdoms. And yet, she shapes destiny through lineage, because when she chose to mate with Cus, the titan of intellect, Axis, and celestial wisdom, their union was not passionate chaos, but something else. It was design. From their minds came two daughters, Leto, future mother of Artemis, and Apollo, Asteria, goddess of falling stars and nocturnal prophecy. These two children of shining intellect and deep insight would continue the thread of celestial knowledge through both blood and spirit. Leto, calm and regal, would become the bearer of new light, not raw like Helios, but divine like Apollo, and wild like Artemis. Asteria, elusive and burning, would fall from the sky into the sea, becoming the island of Delos, the very birthplace of prophecy incarnate. And it is Phoebe who begins this thread. She is the grandmother of the Oracle of Delphi, not in metaphor, but in mythological genealogy. When Apollo claims Delphi, it is said he inherits it from Phoebe. Some even say she gifted it to him directly, recognizing that the flame of foresight must pass on, not fade. That knowledge must evolve, taking new shapes, new temples, new voices. And so she stepped aside, not with defeat, but with grace. Imagine that. A Titaness, one of the 12 eldest beings of the cosmos, quietly handing over the most sacred sight in Greece to a new god. That is power, not domination, but vision, knowing when to let go. Knowing what matters most is not the self, but the continuation of the truth. This act alone makes her divine in a way few others are. She does not demand. She does not punish. She does not shatter the earth or curse mortals. She simply knows, and what she knows, she passes on. The world remembers war, but the world is shaped by what it cannot see. Phoebe never stood atop Olympus. She never led a rebellion. She did not bear weapons or banners, and yet, she left behind a current that never stopped flowing. After she relinquished Delphi to Apollo, many assumed she faded, that the old Titaness retreated into shadow, like so many of her kind buried in Tartarus, or washed away by the rising tide of Olympian myth. But Phoebe was never meant to be a flame. She was meant to be a mirror, and mirrors don't vanish. They reflect whatever stands before them. Even in the quiet mythology of later centuries, her essence remained in every woman who saw without being seen, in every priestess who sat at the threshold of mystery, in every whisper of fate that passed through trembling lips at the sacred stone of Delphi. In truth, Phoebe never left Delphi, not entirely, because what is prophecy, if not memory passed forward? What is foresight, if not a gift inherited, shaped, and reflected through time? And this inheritance was not just spiritual, it was familial. Her daughter, Leto, perhaps the most misunderstood of the Titanides, would carry the weight of exile and perseverance. After being impregnated by Zeus, Leto was chased across the earth by Hera's wrath. She could find no sanctuary. No island would let her land. No land would offer safety. Until, at last, the island Delos rose from the sea. A floating, unstable land. Asteria, Phoebe's other daughter, who had cast herself into the sea to avoid the lust of Zeus, transformed into the very ground upon which Apollo and Artemis would be born. That is no coincidence. That is a mythic cycle. Phoebe gives gives Apollo and Artemis. Phoebe gives Asteria, gives Delos, gives the birthplace of light. The lunar glow of Phoebe wraps around her descendants. Artemis, goddess of the moon, of hunt and wild things, inherits the cool purity of Phoebe's vision. Her arrows strike, not just beasts, but falsehoods. She walks alone because she sees too clearly. Apollo, god of the sun, music, and most famously prophesied Phoebe's Delphic thread. His oracles, his clarity, his reason, they do not emerge from Zeus, nor from Leto, but from the Titaness, who once sat in contemplative silence at Delphi, the first mind of the cosmos. And so, every utterance from the Pythia, the priestess at Delphi, can be traced back to Phoebe, not through myth, through memory. Phoebe lives on in every question the Greeks ever posed to the gods. Should we go to war? Who will rule next? Where is my lost son? What must I do to survive? When mortals knelt at the temple and begged for divine insight, it was not only Apollo they invoked, it was Phoebe's spark, passed down through generations, speaking once, more through sacred breath. This is the legacy of the silent goddesses, and we must ask, what kind of power chooses to speak only through others? A lesser being would cling to visibility, a weaker force would demand recognition. But Phoebe, she transmitted. She didn't care for names in stone. She cared for continuity. This is what separates the eternal from the merely powerful. Because in a mythology filled with noise, clashing swords, thundering skies, wailing curses, Phoebe speaks in a whisper. And that whisper has lasted longer than any shout, even in the Hellenistic era. As Greek gods blended with Eastern traditions, and oracles became politicized, the purity of the Delphic voice still held weight. Why? Because it had roots, because it had depth, because it came from a place older than Olympus. It came from Phoebe. The ancient Greeks believed that true prophecy required distance, not just from the present moment, but from bias, from emotion, from personal desire. Phoebe was the embodiment of that distance, not cold, not indifferent, but clear. This clarity is not easily understood by modern minds. We associate intelligence with words, arguments, innovation. Phoebe's intelligence is different. It is luminous. It does not invent. It reveals. She does not outthink. She illuminates. And so she remains a presence beneath the myths, like silver veins in dark rock, unseen but gleaming when struck by the right angle of light. Even now, she waits, not in temples or in altars, but in every moment when we seek to understand rather than react, in every pause before action. In every feeling of this path feels right, though I cannot explain why. That's not instinct. That's not logic. That's Phoebe. Her gift is not just for prophets. It is for anyone willing to listen to the quiet brilliance within. And so she endures, not as a warrior, not as a queen, but as the source of sacred vision. Before the sea had a name, before rivers traced their veins across the skin of the earth, there was Tethys. She is often forgotten, not because she was small, but because she was everywhere. In mythological texts, she is rarely described in vivid detail. She doesn't hurl tempests or appear in flaming visions. Her presence is felt instead in the cool breath of a spring, in the first dew on grass, in the gurgle of a brook winding through forest stone. Tethys is the tightness of fresh water, not the ocean. That domain belonged to her brother and consort Oceanus, the vast circular river that encircled the earth. But Tethys, she is the source that nourishes. She is the life within that water, the still, hidden pulse behind lakes, rivers, clouds, and rain. She is not the wave that crashes. She is the current that carries. From the union of Oceanus and Tethys came thousands. Yes, thousands of children. Among them were the 3,000 river gods, known as the Potamoi, each representing a specific river, and the Oceanids. Their equally numerous sisters, goddesses of springs, clouds, fountains, and rain. To birth that many is not just to create offspring, it is to become an ecosystem. Tethys is the mythic hydrological cycle personified. Wherever water flows, nourishes, or renews, that is her. She is not water in chaos. She is water in harmony. This distinction matters deeply, because in many myths, water is ambiguous. It gives life, but also drowns. It purifies, but erodes. Gods like Poseidon, and even Oceanus, represent this duality. But Tethys, she is pure sustenance. She does not rage. She flows. To understand her place in mythology, we must shift how we perceive divine power. Tethys is not a god of control, but a god of continuity. Her waters do not obey. They sustain. Consider this. Tethys never appears in the Titanomachy, the great war between the Olympians and Titans, not because she was weak, but because she chose not to take sides, while Oceanus remained neutral, resisting Cronus's violent rule, but never challenging Zeus. Tethys took a role even more radical. She nurtured peace. In fact, when Hera, future queen of Olympus, was an infant, it was Tethys and Oceanus who raised her. Let that settle. Tethys, a titaness of the old order, nurtured the child who would one day become queen of the new gods. This is no small detail. This is myth, the symbolic transition. Tethys becomes the bridge between ages, the nurse of future sovereignty, a titaness who saw beyond power struggles into what must survive, life itself. While Gaia represents earth and Rhea represents the maternal archetype of motherhood, Tethys is sustaining motherhood, the long-term, slow devotion of nature's cycles, the patience of rain clouds, the quiet persistence of springs that never dry. She doesn't conquer. She outlasts. Even her name is ancient. In Greek, tau eta theta, y sigma thias, shares etymological roots with words like nourish, and possibly even the word for grandmother, but more deeply, Tethys is linked to the primordial feminine waters of pre-Hellenic cultures, suggesting that her myth may stretch back into prehistoric ritual memory, and she is not forgotten outside Greece. In Roman tradition, Tethys is remembered in mosaics and poetry, often shown as a serene, seated figure with water flowing from her arms or garments, not just a being of power, but of grace. In some cosmologies, she is said to be the mother of the clouds, the provider of rain, the secret spring inside the sky. She feeds the land not by force, but by rhythm. This role is not dramatic. It is eternal, because Tethys teaches us that power is not always thunder. Sometimes it is the slow drip that wears down stone, the consistent pulse that allows civilizations to bloom, the hidden nourishment that allows everything else to thrive. Tethys is the unseen pulse beneath the world's breath. She is the slow pulse that never stops. While Oceanus encircles the earth with a vast, ceaseless flow, it is Tethys who gives the rivers their voices. She is the whisper in the forest streams, the shimmer of sunlight on a mountain lake, the delicate mist rising at dawn, the life-giver flowing through every valley and plain. Her children, the river gods, the Oceanids, are countless. Each river, spring, and fountain was believed to carry her blessing, her essence. They were not mere waters. They were gods because they carried life, memory, and sacred presence. Think of the great rivers of Greece, the Alpheus, the Peneus, the Spercheius. Each had a divine father, but all were nurtured by the grace of Tethys. Her essence flows in their currents, carrying fertility to the soil, refreshment to animals and humans, and the sacred connection between sky and earth. In ancient rituals, water was more than a physical necessity. It was a symbol of purification and rebirth, a medium between the mortal world and the divine. Tethys, as the mother of all fresh waters, was central to these sacred cycles. Priests and priestesses would invoke her as they blessed the waters, calling upon her nurturing power to cleanse sins, heal wounds, and bless births. Yet despite her importance, Tethys remains a figure of humility in mythology. She does not command armies or wield thunderbolts. She does not enact dramatic curses or fiery punishments. Her power is quiet, slow, but relentless, like water wearing down stone, shaping landscapes, sustaining life. This quiet persistence made her a symbol of natural order and patience. Ancient poets and philosophers reflected on this, the way water flows steadily, never stopping, never needing to be seen to do its work. Tethys embodies the virtue of endurance and the essential grace of life itself. Her myth also holds a subtle lesson. True power is often hidden in the small, continual acts that sustain the world. It is not only the dramatic and visible that shape existence, but the steady and unseen. Even in modern times, echoes of Tethys live on when we think of rivers as lifelines for civilizations. When we honor the sacredness of water in ritual or conservation, we tap into her ancient legacy, and so, the tightness of fresh water remains ever present, flowing beneath the myth, beneath the stars, nurturing life quietly, eternally. This chapter focuses on Themis, the tightness of divine law, order, and justice. She is one of the few Titans who sided with Zeus and was spared punishment. Themis embodies the very foundation of cosmic balance, morality, and the unbreakable order that governs gods and mortals alike. In the swirling chaos of the primordial cosmos, when gods and titans warred and the earth shook beneath their wrath, there was a force that stood apart not in battle, but in silent, unwavering authority. That force was Dot. She was not a warrior. She was not a trickster. She was the embodiment of law, the invisible thread weaving order through the unruly tapestry of existence. Her name means divine law or custom. But to the ancient Greeks, she was much more. Themis was the personification of natural law, the sacred rules that govern not just gods, but the very fabric of the universe. She was the foundation of justice, fairness, and the moral compass guiding behavior. Born from Gaia and Uranus, Themis was among the earliest beings older, even than the Olympians themselves. Unlike her siblings, who represented elemental forces or primal power, Themis represented the principle behind power, the idea that power must be constrained by order, that chaos could never reign unchecked. She was a titaness of balance. When the Titans waged their war against Zeus and the Olympians, Themis chose a different path. She sided with Zeus, recognizing that the new order needed structure, fairness, and law to endure. This alliance was not just political. It was cosmic. Without Themis, there could be no just rule, no right or wrong, only endless conflict. No peace, only tyranny or anarchy. She was the keeper of the divine statutes, the invisible hand that upheld truth and punished deception. Her judgment was impartial, her voice unwavering. From her union with Zeus came the Hori and the Moirai, the seasons and the fates. The Hori represented the orderly passage of time and natural cycles, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, day and night, order and peace. They symbolized the rhythms of life, the predictable balance that sustains the cosmos. The Moirai Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos were the spinners of destiny. They controlled the threads of mortal lives, deciding when a soul was born, what path it would take, and when it would be cut free. Through these daughters, Themis's influence permeated every aspect of existence, from the laws of nature to the laws of man in the ancient world. Themis was revered as the embodiment of justice and social order. She was invoked in courts and councils, called upon to inspire fairness and integrity. Her presence was felt wherever truth and law prevailed. Yet, Themis was more than a goddess of rules. She was a living principle, the very essence of balance and harmony. She taught that justice is not mere punishment, but the restoration of order. That law is not tyranny, but the safeguard of freedom. Philosophers of later ages saw in Themis the archetype of natural law, the idea that there is a moral order inherent in the universe, discoverable through reason and observation. Her importance was recognized not only in Greece, but echoed through Roman, Hellenistic, and even early Christian thought, symbolizing the universal need for order amid chaos. As a figure, Themis stands tall in mythology not through stories of grandeur or conquest, but through the quiet, steadfast role of the cosmic Adjudicator. She is the hand that holds the scales, the voice that calls for balance, the spirit that demands truth. To grasp the essence of Themis is to understand that justice is not merely a human invention. It is a cosmic principle. In the ancient Greek worldview, justice was woven into the fabric of the universe itself, as essential as the rising and setting of the sun, the flow of rivers, or the turning of seasons. Themis personified this principle, serving as the ever-watchful guardian of the natural order. Her power did not manifest through force or fury, but through consent and balance. She was the voice of reason when passions flared too high, the hand that guided kings and gods alike toward fairness and moderation. Without Themis, society could descend into chaos. Even the gods themselves could lose their way. The ancient Greeks believed Themis to be the divine counselor of Zeus, whispering laws and decrees that upheld harmony across heaven and earth. While Zeus was the executor of power and authority, Themis was its moral compass. She helped maintain the delicate equilibrium that allowed the Olympian order to flourish. Her daughters embody this balance perfectly. The Hori, or seasons, ensured that the natural world operated on a predictable, cyclical rhythm. Their rule maintained the harmony between growth and decay, light and darkness, sowing and harvest. The Horis symbolize the order of time and nature, essential for life's continuity. The Moirai, or fates, weave the threads of mortal lives with unerring precision. They represent the immutable destiny that no god or mortal can escape, reinforcing the idea that justice transcends all beings. Their mother, Themis, is the source of this unbreakable law. Themis's role in Greek religion extended beyond mythology into ritual and legal practice. Courts would invoke her name as the divine witness to their proceedings, calling upon her to guide judges toward righteous decisions. Her image, often depicted holding scales, became the enduring symbol of justice, a visual representation of balance and fairness that has echoed into modern iconography. Moreover, Themis's influence permeated Greek philosophy. Thinkers like Plato and Aristotle referenced natural law, an ethical order inherent in the cosmos, a concept that can be traced back to Themis's divine authority. She personified the idea that laws should reflect universal truths, not merely human whims. Yet Themis's justice was not blind. It was informed and wise. She understood the complexity of right and wrong, the necessity of mercy alongside punishment. Her wisdom allowed for flexibility within order, a recognition that the harmony she upheld was dynamic, not rigid. In some myths, Themis also functioned as the oracle at Delphi before Apollo assumed that role. This aligns her with foresight and the unfolding of destiny, reinforcing her position as the mediator between fate and free will. Themis is thus both lawgiver and seer, the mother of order and destiny. She binds the cosmos with invisible threads, ensuring that every act has its consequence, every moment its place. Her legacy survives in our modern concepts of justice, law, and governance. When we speak of fairness, equality, and the rule of law, we echo the eternal principle, Themis, embodied. She reminds us that true power is responsibility, the responsibility to maintain balance in all things. In the endless dance between chaos and order, Themis is the steady rhythm beneath the music, silent, unyielding, eternal. Memory is the breath of history. Without it, gods, heroes, and men are lost to oblivion. Among the Titans, few wielded power as quietly profound as Mnemosyne. She was not the bringer of storms, or the creator of earth. She did not wield fire, or command seas. Her dominion was the mind, the vast, unending ocean of memory that shapes identity, culture, and myth, born from Gaia and Uranus. Mnemosyne was the embodiment of remembrance, the eternal keeper of stories, songs, and truths, in a world governed by gods who change, fight, and deceive. Memory is the one constant. It preserves what was, informs what is, and shapes what will be. It was Mnemosyne who held this sacred trust. She was more than a record keeper. She was the source of inspiration. From her union with Zeus came the 9 muses, each a divine spirit, of art, science, and creativity. Calliope, epic poetry; Clio, history; Erato, love poetry; Euterpe, music; Melpomene, tragedy; Polyhymnia, hymns; Terpsichore, dance; Thalia, comedy; Urania, astronomy. Together, they breathed life into human culture, giving voice to stories that shaped civilizations. Mnemosyne's gift was not only to remember, but to create, to make memory fertile ground where imagination grows. Her power ensured that history was more than fact. It was meaning. That stories were not just told, but felt. That memory was a living force connecting gods, mortals, and the cosmos. In ancient Greek ritual, Mnemosyne was revered by poets and bards, who invoked her to aid their craft. To call upon Mnemosyne was to seek the wellspring of inspiration and the clarity of recollection. Yet, Mnemosyne's domain is paradoxical. Memory preserves, but also selects. It shapes truth as much as it reflects it. This dual nature makes her both a guardian and a creator, a weaver of history and myth. Without her, the grand epics of Homer would be silent. Without her, the deeds of heroes and gods would vanish like smoke. She is the unseen force behind every story ever told. To remember is to exist. This is the ancient truth that Mnemosyne holds in the vast tapestry of mythology, where gods clash and heroes rise and fall. Memory is the thread that ties everything together. It is not passive, it is active. It shapes what is sacred, what is forgotten, and what is reborn. Mnemosyne stands as the living archive of the cosmos. She does not merely hold the past, she breathes it. The Greeks understood memory as a divine power that connects mortal and immortal realms. To forget was to lose oneself. To remember was to touch eternity. Her daughters, the Muses, are the personification of this truth. Each muse guides a facet of human creativity, ensuring that knowledge and art are passed down through generations. Calliope inspires epic tales, keeping alive the deeds of gods and men. Clio preserves history, reminding us of the rise and fall of empires. Urania charts the heavens, connecting memory to the stars. But Mnemosyne's influence goes beyond inspiration. She represents the principle of recollection that underpins philosophy, poetry, and the very concept of identity. In Plato's dialogues, memory anamnesis is the key to learning the soul, recalling truths it has always known. Though the philosopher did not explicitly invoke Mnemosyne, her essence suffuses this idea. Knowledge is remembering, not discovering. Through Mnemosyne, the past informs the present, and the present shapes the future. Yet, memory is not neutral, it is a filter. A storyteller, Mnemosyne, decides what to preserve and what to let fade. Her power is both creative and destructive. This is why myths evolve, why histories are rewritten, and why some tales are lost while others endure. Her presence reminds us that truth is never fixed. It is constructed through memory's lens. The paradox of Mnemosyne is that she is both the mother of stories and their ever-changing canvas. Without her, mythology would be a chaotic jumble of forgotten moments. With her, it becomes a living tradition. She is the reason epics, like the Iliad and Odyssey, have echoed through millennia. The reason we still feel the passions of heroes long dead. The reason culture is a river, not a pond. Mnemosyne teaches that to remember is to create, and through remembering, we participate in the eternal dance of myth and meaning. Even today, every act of telling a story, recalling a name, or preserving a tradition is an act of devotion to Mnemosyne. Her legacy is the breath of memory that animates all life. In the cosmic order of ancient Greek myth, where primordial forces clash and empires of gods rise and fall, there is a quieter, but no less vital figure, Cos. He is the titan of intellect, not the brute strength of Cronus, nor the radiant light of Hyperion, but the piercing insight that cuts through chaos, the question that demands an answer, the mind that turns the endless sky. Cos represents the axis of inquiry, the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar around which all knowledge spins. His name, Kappa Omicron Omicron Sigma, echoes, query, and question, symbolizing his role as the embodiment of curiosity and rational thought in the primordial universe. Born from Gaia and Uranus, Cos was the silent architect behind the emergence of wisdom. Unlike his more tempestuous siblings, he wielded no sword or storm, but the sharp edge of reason. Though he did not storm Olympus or wage great battles, Cos's power was foundational. He upheld the heavens, the celestial vault, and stood as the pivot point of the cosmos. From his union with Phoebe, the tightness of bright, prophetic insight came to daughters whose influence would ripple throughout myth and humanity. Leto, the serene mother of Apollo and Artemis, Asteria, the goddess of falling stars and nocturnal magic. This lineage marks Cos as a progenitor, not only of divine light, but of the quest for knowledge and the mysteries of the night sky. Cos's intellect was not mere logic, but the spark of revelation, the same spark that kindled the human thirst for the unknown, for truth hidden in the stars, in shadows, and in prophecy. He is the first thinker, the primordial mind, pondering the vastness above, though overshadowed by the brilliance of his children and the thunderous reign of Zeus. Cos's role was indispensable. Without the axis of intellect, the cosmos would be a spinning chaos without order or understanding. In some myths, Cos was confined deep within Tartarus after the Titanomachy, his power imprisoned but not extinguished. His spirit lingered in the endless questions of mortals, in the yearning to comprehend the heavens, and in the divine wisdom whispered through oracles and philosophers. Philosophically, Cos embodies the eternal human pursuit of knowledge, the tension between what is known and what remains a mystery. He is the unanswered question that drives science, philosophy, and myth. Cos stood at the center of the cosmos, an unseen axis upon which the heavens turned. While others wielded power with thunder and sword, Cos wielded the quiet force of contemplation. His intellect was not merely knowledge. It was the hunger for understanding, the restless question that sparks every discovery. He embodied the eternal tension between light and darkness, known and unknown. The stars above, vast and inscrutable, were his domain as much as his daughters. Cos was the keeper of cosmic mysteries, the silent observer in the void who sought to unravel the secrets of the universe. Though imprisoned in the depths of Tartarus after the Titanomachy, Cos's essence never faded. It lived on in the minds of mortals who gazed upward, wondering about their place among the stars. His legacy is the spark that lights the flame of inquiry in every philosopher, scientist, and dreamer. His daughter, Leto's serene strength, mirrored his quiet wisdom. She would birth Apollo and Artemis, gods who would embody light, prophecy, and the wild hunt manifestations of the knowledge Cos sought to understand. Through them, his intellect spread across the world, illuminating the dark corners of existence. Asteria, his other daughter, became the embodiment of the night's mysteries, the falling stars, omens, and hidden truths. Her transformation into the island of Delos symbolized the bridging of celestial wisdom and earthly birth. a physical anchor for the divine knowledge Cos held. In this way, Cos's power is both cosmic and intimate, linking the infinite sky with the fragile world beneath. He is the axis around which both galaxies and thoughts revolve. The silent question that invites us to look beyond what is seen and ponder what lies beyond. Through Cos, the ancient Greeks expressed the profound respect for intellect and the unknown. He reminds us that wisdom is not just what we hold but what we seek, that knowledge is a journey, not a destination. Even now, his influence permeates our pursuit of the stars, the unfolding of science, and the endless human quest to understand the universe and ourselves. Cos's legacy is the fire of curiosity that never dies, the mind forever reaching beyond the horizon. Iapetus, the titan of mortality and craftsmanship, stands as one of the most profound, yet often overlooked figures among the ancient titans. While many titans embody cosmic forces like the sun, sky, or earth, Iapetus is tied to the human condition, itself representing the limits of mortality, the fate of man, and the origin of humanity's struggles. Born from Gaia and Uranus, Iapetus is the father of some of mythology's most tragic and instructive figures: Prometheus, Epimetheus, Atlas, and Menelaus. Each child reflects an aspect of the human journey: foresight and rebellion, afterthought and mistake, burden and downfall, and violent recklessness. Iapetus is sometimes called the piercer, or the piercer of the veil, symbolizing the painful barrier between the divine and mortal realms, life and death, knowledge and ignorance. His essence embodies the finite nature of humanity, the awareness that, unlike the gods, mortals must face death, hardship, and the consequences of their choices. This mortal coil is Iapetus's domain, making him a crucial figure in bridging divine mythology with the human experience. Through his offspring, his legacy extends deeply into myth and culture. Prometheus, the clever and defiant titan, challenges Zeus himself to bring fire and, thus, knowledge and civilization to humanity. He suffers eternal punishment for his gift, embodying the price of enlightenment and the rebel spirit. Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, acts without foresight, and is the unwitting cause of Pandora's box opening, releasing evils into the world. He represents human error, folly, and the consequences of rash decisions. Atlas bears the weight of the heavens, condemned for his role in the Titanomachy. His burden is the eternal struggle and endurance, a metaphor for humanity's unending labor and responsibility. Menelaus, the titan of violent anger and rash action, is struck down by Zeus's thunderbolt, symbolizing the dangers of uncontrolled hubris and wrath. Together, these sons of Iapetus encapsulate the duality of human nature's strength and weakness, wisdom and folly, rebellion and submission. Unlike other titans who wield elemental power, Iapetus's domain is internal and existential. He represents the very condition of being human, mortal, flawed, but striving. In this way, Iapetus serves as the titan of human fate, a reminder that our greatest challenges and gifts are intertwined. His myth teaches that mortality is not merely an end but a defining aspect of life's meaning. Through suffering, knowledge, and responsibility, humanity forges its path. Iapetus's influence on the human saga is profound and multifaceted. Though he himself is a shadowy figure in myth, the ripples of his legacy shape the very essence of humanity's story. Let us begin with his sons, whose myths illuminate different facets of mortal existence. Prometheus, perhaps the most famous of Iapetus's children, stands as the champion of mankind. His name means forethought, embodying wisdom and planning. In a universe dominated by gods who wield immense power and often act with capriciousness, Prometheus emerges as a symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and defiance. Prometheus's greatest act was to steal fire from the gods and give it to humanity, gift that enabled civilization to flourish. Fire represents not only warmth and light, but also technology, knowledge, and the spark of consciousness. But this gift came at a terrible cost. Zeus, angered by the theft and the challenge to divine authority, condemned Prometheus to eternal torment, chained to a rock where an eagle would devour his liver daily, only for it to regenerate and the torture to begin anew. Prometheus's story encapsulates the theme of sacrifice inherent in human progress. The idea that knowledge and advancement are often won through suffering and rebellion. He is both hero and martyr, reflecting the complexity of human striving. Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, contrasts sharply with his brother. Where Prometheus plans, Epimetheus acts impulsively. He is often portrayed as foolish or naive, accepting Pandora as a gift from the gods despite warnings. Pandora's opening of the infamous box unleashed suffering, disease, and death upon humanity, myth explaining why the world contains pain and hardship through Epimetheus. The myth conveys the consequences of neglecting foresight and the human tendency toward error. He is the embodiment of unintended consequences and the limits of human wisdom. Atlas, another son of Iapetus, was condemned after the Titanomachy to bear the weight of the heavens on his shoulders. His eternal burden symbolizes endurance, responsibility, and the weight of cosmic order. Atlas's punishment is not merely physical but deeply symbolic, representing the unending struggles humans face, the heavy burdens imposed by fate, and the need for strength and perseverance. In art and literature, Atlas often stands as a figure of heroic suffering, reminding us that strength is not absence of pain, but the capacity to carry it. Menetius, whose name signifies doomed wrath, represents violent anger and rash behavior. Struck down by Zeus's thunderbolt, he serves as a cautionary figure about the dangers of uncontrolled passion and pride. Menetius embodies the destructive side of human nature: impulsiveness, hubris, and self-destruction. Together, these four sons form a complex portrait of humanity, as seen through myths capable of foresight and rebellion, but also folly and rashness. Burdened by fate, yet striving for meaning. But Iapetus's role is not limited to his offspring. As a Titan, he represents the very essence of mortality and human limitation. In a cosmos ruled by immortal gods, Iapetus's presence acknowledges the inevitability of death and the finite nature of human life. His domain is the space where mortal and divine intersect, where humans must navigate suffering, knowledge, and destiny without the eternal protections of gods. This tension between mortality and divinity is central to Greek thought. It shapes the tragedies of Sophocles and Euripides, the epics of Homer, and the philosophical inquiries of Plato and Aristotle. Iapetus, then, is the Titan of the human condition, not as a god of glory, but as a reminder of our fragility, our struggles, and our capacity to transcend limits through wisdom and endurance. His myth teaches that mortality is not a curse, but a defining feature that gives life its urgency and meaning. It is through acceptance of this condition that humans find their dignity. In this way, Iapetus stands as both ancestor and teacher. His story invites reflection on what it means to be human in a divine world, caught between power and limitation, knowledge and ignorance, hope and despair. His shadow looms over every human journey, reminding us that to live is to bear burdens, to seek knowledge, and to confront the inevitable with courage. Cronus, one of the elder Titans, stands as a formidable, yet enigmatic figure in the ancient pantheon. While overshadowed by more prominent siblings like Cronus or Oceanus, Cronus embodies the cosmic force of constellations, cosmic order, and the boundless heavens. His domain bridges the earth and the stars, weaving the fabric of celestial cycles that govern time and fate. Born from Gaia and Uranus, Cronus's name is often associated with the ram, hinting at his connection to the zodiac and the celestial sphere. His role is to uphold the constellations, those luminous patterns that have guided sailors, farmers, and kings since the dawn of civilization. Though his myths are sparse, Cronus' influence is profound. He represents the unseen framework of the cosmos, the ordered dance of stars that marks seasons, portends omens, and connects mortals to the divine. From his union with Rhea, the goddess of mastery over the sea's storms, Cronus fathered 3 sons, Astrios, Paias, and Perses, each linked to elemental forces and cosmic phenomena. The Titan of dusk and stars, married Eos, goddess of dawn, producing the 4 winds and the stars of the night sky. Through Astraeus, Cronus' legacy flows directly into the rhythms of day and night. The breath of the world itself, Pallas, associated with warfare and skill, represents the martial and disciplined aspects of cosmic order. His daughter Nike, goddess of victory, embodies the triumph born from order and strategy. Perses, linked to destruction and peace, fathered Hecate, goddess of magic, crossroads, and the liminal spaces between worlds. Through Perses, Cronus' lineage touches the mysterious and the transformative. The power that lies between known and unknown. Cronus' position among the Titans is that of a cosmic architect, one who maintains the celestial order without fanfare. He is the silent guardian of the night sky, the Titan who ensures the stars follow their eternal courses. Weaving fate into the fabric of time, in many ways, Cronus embodies the boundary between chaos and order, holding the heavens steady as the earth turns beneath. His presence reminds mortals that while storms rage and empires fall, the stars remain constant, a guiding light in the darkness. Though lacking dramatic tales of rebellion or punishment, Cronus' role is essential. He is the keeper of celestial laws, the unseen hand shaping destinies through the movement of the stars. His legacy lives on in the zodiac, in the rhythms of the heavens that govern agriculture, navigation, and prophecy. Cronus teaches us that in the vast universe, order and pattern emerge from apparent chaos, that even in the darkest night, the stars hold a map for those willing to look. Hyperion, the Titan of light, the watchful guardian of the celestial flame, stands as one of the most radiant and vital figures in ancient Greek mythology. His name, meaning the High One, or he who goes above, reflects his dominion over the heavenly bodies and the eternal light that illuminates the world. Born from Gaia and Uranus, Hyperion embodies the pure, unyielding light that shines from the sun, moon, and stars. He is the father of the 3 majestic celestial deities, Helios, the sun, Selene, the moon, and Eos, the dawn, who govern the daily cycles of light and darkness. Unlike other titans associated with elemental forces, Hyperion's essence is the primordial illumination, the first light that pierced the cosmic darkness and made the world visible. His role is foundational. Without Hyperion, the heavens would remain shrouded in shadow, and the rhythms of day and night would be lost. Light is not merely physical illumination. It symbolizes knowledge, clarity, and the life-giving energy that sustains all living things. His mythological presence is majestic and awe-inspiring. As the Titan of the sun and celestial light, Hyperion's gaze is all-seeing, watching over the unfolding of time and the balance of nature. The cycle of light and darkness governed by his children reflects the eternal struggle and harmony between day and night, knowledge and mystery, life and rest. Helios, the radiant sun god, drives his chariot across the sky each day, his blazing horses pulling the sun's golden disk on its celestial path. His light reveals truth, dispels darkness, and nurtures growth. Selene, the serene moon goddess, rules the night, her silver light casting gentle illumination and guiding travelers through darkness. Eos, the rosy-fingered dawn, heralds the return of light, the promise of new beginnings and hope. Through Hyperion, these forces come into being and sustain the world's natural order. Hyperion's significance goes beyond mythology. He represents the ancient reverence for the sun and celestial cycles vital to agriculture, navigation, and the very survival of early civilizations. The light he embodies is a metaphor for enlightenment and divine insight, illuminating the path through ignorance and chaos. His presence reminds us that light is not just a physical phenomenon, but a profound symbol of life, wisdom, and the eternal passage of time. Hyperion's legacy is woven deeply into the fabric of Greek myth and the collective consciousness of humanity. His light is not just the glow that touches the earth each day, but the enduring symbol of clarity, vision, and the relentless passage of time. His son, Helios, often depicted driving a golden chariot pulled by fiery steeds, embodies the sun's unstoppable journey across the sky. Helios was worshipped as the all-seeing witness, the god who could reveal hidden truths simply by shining his light. His gaze was believed to be so penetrating that no deceit could escape it, making him a divine enforcer of truth and justice. The rituals dedicated to Helios were among the oldest in Greek religion. He was called upon to observe oaths, to illuminate the dark corners where secrets might lurk, and to bless journeys undertaken during the daylight. His role extended beyond mere celestial mechanics. He was the embodiment of unveiled knowledge and moral clarity. Selene, his daughter, represents the softer, reflective light of the moon. Where Helios's light is direct and piercing, Selene is gentle and mysterious, casting a serene glow over the night. She governs the tides, the rhythms of rest and dreams, and the subtle cycles that govern life's hidden aspects. Selene's myth includes a poignant tale of love, with the mortal Endymion granted eternal sleep so that she could watch over him forever. This story symbolizes the eternal interplay between light and darkness, consciousness and sleep, the seen and the unseen. Eos, the goddess of dawn, brings the hopeful promise of each new day. She is the harbinger of light, driving away the shadows with her rosy fingers. Eos is associated with renewal, beginnings, and the endless cycle of death and rebirth. Together, Hyperion and his children represent the eternal cycle of light and shadow, knowledge and mystery, life and death, beyond their mythic roles. They embody the ancient human understanding of time as cyclical and governed by celestial patterns. The rising and setting of the sun, the phases of the moon, and the arrival of dawn were not mere natural phenomena but divine expressions of cosmic order. Hyperion's light reminds us that knowledge must be illuminated, truth must be revealed, to guide humanity through darkness. It symbolizes the eternal quest to see clearly, to understand, and to find our place in the universe. The Titan's brilliance shines as a beacon for all who seek wisdom, clarity, and the courage to face the shadows. Rhea, the shining Titaness, embodies the luminous brilliance of the heavens, the dazzling glow of precious metals and gems, and the radiant light that fills the cosmos. Her name means goddess, or divine, reflecting her exalted role as the mother of celestial brilliance and divine splendor. Born of Gaia and Uranus, Rhea is the personification of divine light, the shimmering force that adorns the sky and the earth with beauty and awe. She is the source of the glowing radiance in the sun and moon, not through direct power like her brother Hyperion, but as the essence of splendor and shining brilliance. Through her union with Hyperion, Rhea gave birth to the three celestial deities whose powers and beauty illuminate the heavens: Helios, the sun god; Selene, the moon goddess; and Eos, the dawn goddess. Rhea's role is subtle but essential. She represents the pure light of glory and preciousness, the brilliance that transforms mere substance into something sacred and awe-inspiring. Her influence extends beyond light itself into the world of precious metals and gems: gold, silver, and shining jewels. These materials were considered divine gifts, reflections of her radiant essence. In art and literature, Rhea is often depicted as a radiant figure, shining with ethereal light, embodying the pure and dazzling beauty that inspires reverence and wonder. Rhea's symbolism is complex. She stands at the intersection of the celestial and the earthly, the divine and the material. Her light illuminates the heavens and transforms the earth's treasures into objects of worship and value. This duality reflects the ancient Greek understanding of beauty as both visible splendor and divine essence, a manifestation of the gods' power that captivates mortals and connects them to the divine realm. They is also associated with sight and vision. Her radiant light enables seeing, perception, and insight. This connection ties her to knowledge and awareness, not unlike her sister Mnemosyne's domain of memory in myth. Rhea's luminous power is the source of the gods' ability to shine and command awe. She is the essence behind their majestic appearances, the divine glow that marks them as more than mortal. Through Rhea, the Greeks understood that light is not merely physical, but a symbol of transcendence, revelation, and beauty. She teaches that the radiance of the divine touches both the heavens and the treasures beneath the earth, connecting all that is precious in a cosmic harmony of light. Rhea's radiant influence is not limited to the heavens. It extends deeply into the earthly realm through the precious metals and gems that have captivated humanity for millennia. Gold, silver, and other shining materials were considered fragments of divine light, manifestations of Rhea's essence in tangible form. Ancient cultures revered these materials not only for their beauty and rarity, but for their sacred connection to the gods. To hold gold was to touch a piece of the divine brilliance that Rhea personified. Temples were adorned with gold, crowns were crafted from it, and offerings of precious metals were made to secure favor and protection. Rhea's role as the mother of celestial bodies and shining treasures reflects a profound understanding of light as both visible radiance and spiritual illumination. Her light is the source of all beauty that dazzles the eye and stirs the soul. This divine radiance is intimately connected with vision, both physical sight and deeper perception. They grants the ability to see the world in its true brilliance, to recognize beauty and truth, and to be inspired by the light that transcends ordinary experience. In this sense, Rhea is not just a goddess of external light, but also of inner illumination. She embodies the spark of insight and awareness that enables mortals and gods alike to grasp hidden truths. Her luminous power is reflected in the divine attributes of her children, Helios, whose brilliant sun chariot lights the day and reveals the world, Selene, whose silver glow calms the night and guides the dreamers, Eos, whose rosy fingers paint the dawn with promise and renewal. Together, they carry Rhea's light across the sky, sustaining the eternal cycle of darkness and illumination. Rhea's presence also permeates Greek philosophy and art. The concept of divine light as a metaphor for knowledge, beauty, and truth echoes through classical thought and continues to influence modern perspectives on the nature of perception and inspiration. Her myth reminds us that true beauty and insight come from the interplay of light and matter, spirit and form, that the divine radiance illuminating the heavens is the same force that transforms the earthly into the sacred. Through the Greeks expressed a vision of the cosmos as a place where light and brilliance are not just phenomena, but the very essence of life, knowledge, and transcendence. Rhea, the great titaness of motherhood and fertility, is a figure of profound importance in Greek mythology. As the daughter of Gaia and Uranus, and sister and wife to Cronus, she embodies the vital forces of life, birth, and nurturing, the sacred cycle of creation that sustains the world. Her name, meaning flow or ease, reflects her role as the flowing river of life, the gentle yet unstoppable force that nurtures and sustains all living beings. Rhea's story is deeply intertwined with the rise and fall of the Titans and the Olympian gods. particularly through her role as the mother of the first generation of Olympians: Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, Demeter, and Hestia. The myth of Rhea centers on her courageous defiance of Cronus, her husband and brother, who feared being overthrown by his own children. To prevent this, Cronus swallowed each of their offspring at birth, devouring his own children in a desperate bid to maintain power. Rhea, devastated yet resolute, devised a daring plan to save her youngest child, Zeus. She secretly gave birth to him in a hidden cave on the island of Crete, entrusting his care to nymphs and the divine goat, Amalthea, to deceive Cronus. Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes, which Cronus swallowed without suspicion. Zeus was thus preserved, hidden away to grow strong and eventually challenge his father. Fulfilling the prophecy of overthrow, Rhea's courage and maternal devotion not only saved the future king of the gods, but also ensured the survival of the divine order and the eventual triumph of the Olympians. Beyond her role as mother, Rhea is revered as a goddess of fertility and the earth's abundance. She is often associated with the Great Mother archetype, embodying the nurturing aspects of nature, the cycles of growth, harvest, and renewal. In ancient cults, Rhea was worshipped alongside Cybele, the Phrygian mother goddess, and was linked to rites celebrating fertility, life's continuity, and the sacred feminine. Her symbolism extends to the eternal cycle of birth and rebirth, reflecting the natural rhythms of the earth and the perpetuation of life through generations. Narrative also highlights themes of resistance, protection, and hope. Through her boldness in saving Zeus, she demonstrates the power of maternal love and the will to safeguard the future, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Her legacy resonates through Greek mythology as a testament to the enduring strength of life and the sacred duty to nurture and protect. Rhea's role as the Great Mother extends beyond the mere act of birth. She represents the nurturing heart of the cosmos, the force that sustains life through endless cycles of growth and renewal. Her connection to the earth and fertility places her among the most revered figures in ancient Greek religion. The rites dedicated to Rhea were often wild and ecstatic, reflecting the primal energy of nature itself. Festivals in her honor featured music, dancing, and frenzied celebrations, symbolizing the vitality and abundance she bestowed upon the world. In many ways, Rhea embodies the power of the feminine divina force, both gentle and fierce, capable of creation and protection. Her influence is also deeply linked to the rise of Zeus, whose reign marked a new era for gods and mortals alike. By saving Zeus, Rhea not only preserved her own lineage, but paved the way for the Olympian order and the establishment of cosmic balance. The story of Rhea and Cronus can be seen as a profound metaphor for the cycle of death and rebirth, the overthrow of the old by the new, and the eternal renewal that governs all life. Through her, the Greeks understood that, even in the darkest times, life flows on. Carried by the courage and sacrifice of those who nurture the future, Rhea's legacy is a powerful reminder of the strength inherent in motherhood, the resilience of nature, and the sacred continuity of existence. Cos, sometimes overshadowed by more famous titans, holds a pivotal role in the cosmic order as the titan of intellect, inquiry, and the axis of the heavens. His essence embodies the profound pursuit of knowledge and the cosmic pillar that supports the universe's structure. Born of Gaia and Uranus, Cos personifies the quest for understanding, the relentless drive to pierce through the unknown and grasp the hidden truths of existence. His name is often linked with questioning and intelligence, representing the first spark of curiosity that propels mortals and gods alike. While many titans govern elemental forces, Cos's dominion is the abstract yet essential realm of mind, and cosmos the invisible axis mundi, upon which the celestial spheres revolve. Through his union with Phoebe, the titaness of prophecy and bright intellect, Cous fathered two daughters of great importance, Leto and Asteria. Leto, the serene mother of Apollo and Artemis, embodies grace, light, and prophecy, while Asteria, the goddess of nocturnal oracles and falling stars, represents mystery, transformation, and the thresholds between worlds. Cous's legacy, therefore, is woven into the fabric of divine insight, cosmic order, and the profound mysteries that lie between light and shadow, though he plays a less dramatic role in mythic tales than some titans. Cous's significance lies in his embodiment of the plot, intellectual and spiritual pillars of the universe supporting the very framework of existence through knowledge and foresight. He symbolizes the eternal human drive to question, to seek, and to understand the cosmos and our place within it. Cous's profound influence is seen most clearly through his children and their roles within the pantheon. His daughter Leto is a symbol of calm and serene wisdom, the mother of two of the most significant Olympian deities, Apollo and Artemis. These children carry forward Cous's legacy of light, prophecy, and balance. Apollo, the radiant god of the sun, music, healing, and prophecy, embodies the intellectual and spiritual clarity that springs from Cous's realm. His oracle at Delphi serves as a conduit of divine knowledge, where mortals seek guidance from the mysteries of the universe. Through Apollo, the quest for truth and understanding becomes a divine mandate. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and the moon, represents the balance between civilization and nature, the known and the wild unknown. She embodies independence, protection, and the sacred cycles of life and death. Cous's other daughter, Asteria, is the goddess of nocturnal divinations and falling stars, symbols of mystery and transformation. When pursued by Zeus, Asteria transformed herself into the island of Delos, a sacred place of birth and refuge. Her domain straddles the line between light and darkness, knowledge and mystery, embodying the transitional spaces where change and revelation occur. Together, Cous's offspring illustrate the Titan's role as the axis around which cosmic knowledge and mystery revolve. Cous himself, while not a prominent figure in many myths, serves as a powerful symbol of the intellectual foundation of the cosmos. He is the unseen pillar supporting the heavens and the source of humanity's drive to explore, understand, and transcend. In philosophical terms, Cous represents the spark of curiosity and the profound human desire to seek meaning beyond the visible world. His presence reminds us that wisdom is not merely received, but pursued, an endless journey through the vast unknown. Though bound and cast down with his Titan brethren after the Titanomachy, Cous's spirit endures in every question asked, every mystery pondered, and every star charted in the night sky. Phoebe, the luminous Titaness of intellect and prophecy, is one of the most fascinating yet often understated figures in Greek mythology. Her name, meaning bright or radiant, reflects her role as the shining source of divine wisdom and the prophetic light that pierces the veil of the future. Born of Gaia and Uranus, Phoebe embodies the brilliant mind and the sacred gift of foresight, the ability to see beyond the present and glimpse the hidden threads that weave fate. Unlike Titans associated with elemental forces, Phoebe represents the ethereal power of the mind, of illumination that transcends time and space. Phoebe's legacy is most prominently carried through her daughters, Leto and Asteria, who inherit and expand her domains of light, prophecy, and transformation. Through Leto come Apollo and Artemis, deities who personify the radiant clarity of knowledge and the mystical cycles of nature. Asteria, goddess of nocturnal oracles and falling stars, symbolizes the mysterious and elusive nature of prophecy. Phoebe is also linked with the moon's bright intellect and the ancient traditions of divination practiced under the moonlight, the sacred moment when the veil between worlds thins and secrets are revealed. Her presence in myth reveals the profound reverence the Greeks held for wisdom and the ability to foresee fate's course. Phoebe teaches that intellect is not merely knowledge but a divine illumination, a beacon guiding mortals and gods alike through uncertainty. In many ways, Phoebe bridges the cosmic and the personal. She is the shining mind that contemplates the stars and the subtle whisper that foretells destiny. Her radiance is both a light to behold and a mystery to unravel. Her influence extends beyond mythology into philosophy and religion. Ancient oracles and seers invoked the power of such divine intellect, seeking clarity and insight. The concept of prophecy as divine knowledge hidden in symbols, dreams, and stars finds its roots in Phoebe's luminous domain. Phoebe reminds us that knowledge is a gift but also a responsibility, a guiding light that must be wielded with wisdom and care. Phoebe's radiant intellect and prophetic power extend far beyond the myths that name her. She is the embodiment of a profound principle. That knowledge of the future is not mere chance, but a divine gift, a sacred insight into the unfolding tapestry of time. Her daughter Leto, carrying this legacy, becomes the mother of Apollo and Artemis, whose own domains are deeply tied to prophecy and divine revelation. Apollo's oracle at Delphi, perhaps the most famous in all Greek mythology, stands as a living testament to Phoebe's enduring influence. Through Apollo, humanity glimpses the will of the gods, hears the voice of fate, and confronts the mysteries of existence. Asteria, Phoebe's other daughter, represents a different aspect of prophecy, the elusive, the secret, and the mystical. As goddess of the nocturnal and the stars that fall silently through the night sky, she embodies the subtle messages carried by dreams, omens, and the unseen forces that shape destiny. Her transformation into the island of Delos' sacred refuge and birthplace of Apollo and Artemis symbolizes the grounding of divine mystery in the earthly world. Through Asteria, prophecy becomes both celestial and tangible, bridging the gap between the heavens and the mortal realm. Phoebe's role as a Titaness is not confined to passive inheritance. She represents the active illumination that prophecy demands, the shining intellect that penetrates the darkness of uncertainty and reveals the paths ahead. The ancient Greeks honored this power, weaving it into their religious practices, rituals, and philosophical explorations. Prophets, oracles, and seers were revered as vessels of Phoebe's light, their insights shaping politics, warfare, and personal fate. But with great power comes great responsibility. The gift of foresight is double-edged, capable of guiding or destroying, offering hope or despair. Phoebe's myth reminds us that knowledge of the future must be approached with humility and care. Her shining light is a beacon, but also a warning. To peer too far into the unknown risks losing oneself in shadows. Through Phoebe, the Greeks conveyed a profound truth about the nature of wisdom. It is both illuminating and mysterious, a gift that reveals and conceals in equal measure. Her legacy endures not only in myth, but in the human quest for understanding, the eternal desire to glimpse what lies beyond the horizon of now. Tethys, the Titaness of the primal waters, stands as one of the ancient and vital forces in Greek mythology, embodying the nourishing and life-giving qualities of the oceans, rivers, and fresh waters that sustain the world. Daughter of Gaia and Uranus, and wife to her brother, Oceanus, she represents the endless flow of waters that encircle and nurture the earth. Her name, meaning fresh water or grandmother, reflects her role as the universal mother of the rivers, springs, and the seas. Together with Oceanus, she mothered the Potamoy River, gods, and the Oceanists, the nymphs of the waters, who populate streams, lakes, and fountains. Tethys personifies the primal and fertile aspects of water, the source from which all life emerges, and to which it ultimately returns. Her domain is vast and ancient, encompassing the life-giving currents that nurture the Earth's ecosystems and sustain humanity. In myth, Tethys is often portrayed as a serene and nurturing figure, symbolizing the essential balance between strength and gentleness in nature. Her waters are at once powerful and soothing, capable of both destruction and renewal. Though Tethys does not often take center stage in dramatic myths, her presence underlies many stories of gods and mortals alike. Her offspring populate the mythic landscape, influencing rivers, seas, and the very flow of life. Tethys's importance is also reflected in ancient Greek reverence for water as sacred and life-sustaining. Springs and rivers were often sites of worship, and their deities honored as sources of health, fertility, and purification. Through Tethys, the Greeks acknowledged water's dual nature as a force of creation and a boundary between worlds, the vital current of existence that connects earth, sea, and sky. Her myth teaches us that life is a constant flow, an unending cycle of giving and receiving, nurturing and letting go. Tethys's vast influence manifests most vividly through her numerous children, who personify the rivers, streams, and fountains essential to life in myth. Among her offspring are the Potamoi, mighty river gods who govern the freshwater arteries of the ancient world, and the Oceanids, ethereal nymphs who inhabit the springs, wells, and seas. Each river god, a son of Tethys and Oceanus, was believed to have a unique character and domain. For example, Alpheus, the river god of the Peloponnese, was known for his passionate love story with the nymph Arethusa, weaving the intertwining of natural phenomena with divine narratives. Such myths reveal how deeply the Greeks connected natural water bodies with divine personalities and sacred stories. The Oceanids, Tethys's daughters, number in the thousands, symbolizing the countless manifestations of water on earth. These nymphs were not only personifications of rivers and springs, but also custodians of fertility, childbirth, and protection. Their presence underscores the reverence the ancient Greeks held for water as a source of life and transformation. Tethys herself embodies the eternal flow of water, unceasing, renewing, and sustaining. Her waters wash over the land, nurture crops, and provide the essential element for human survival. Yet, like water itself, her nature is fluid and changeable, representing the cycles of growth, decay, and rebirth. In some myths, Tethys is associated with the primal waters that predate the separation of earth and sky, hinting at her fundamental role in creation itself. She is the living memory of the world's earliest waters, the divine mother of all aquatic life. Despite her quieter presence in myth, Tethys's influence is profound. She reminds us of the delicate balance in nature, the interplay of power and gentleness, destruction and renewal. Her waters symbolize the passage of time and the continuity of life, flowing endlessly from the past into the future. In worship and ritual, the ancient Greeks honored Tethys and her children through sacred springs, rivers, and seas, recognizing their vital role in the health of the land and the prosperity of communities. Through Tethys, the mythic imagination captures the essence of water's sacredness and its central place in the cosmic order. Her story invites reflection on the importance of nurturing, sustaining, and respecting the natural flows that sustain all existence. Tethys teaches that life itself is a flowing river, sometimes calm, sometimes tumultuous, but always moving forward, carrying us toward renewal and transformation. Cronus, the Titan of constellations and the cosmic axis, remains one of the more obscure, yet fundamentally important figures in Greek mythology. Born of Gaia and Uranus, his essence is tied to the stars, the heavens, and the celestial order that governs time and fate. The name Cronus is often linked to the ram, symbolizing strength, and the zodiac sign Aries, which heralds the beginning of the astrological year. This connection hints at his role as a cosmic pillar, anchoring the movements of the stars and marking the cycles of the heavens. Cronus's domain is the celestial order, the invisible framework through which the cosmos spins, while other titans wield elemental forces like the earth, sea, and sky. Cryos's power is the steady rhythm of the stars, the enduring patterns that have guided mortals for ages. Through his union with Eurybiel, the goddess of mastery over the sea storms, Cryos fathered 3 important titans, Hyperion, associated with dusk and the stars, whose children include the 4 winds and the stars themselves. Pallas, connected to warfare and craft, whose daughter Nike personifies victory. Perses, linked to destruction and peace, father of Hecate, goddess of magic and crossroads. Each son embodies aspects of cosmic power, reflecting Cryos's influence across the domains of night, battle, and mystery. Despite his relatively limited presence in mythic narratives, Cryos's role is crucial. He maintains the celestial order, the constellations, and the cosmic rhythms upon which all life depends. The stars were more than just lights in the sky to the ancient Greeks. They were guides, symbols, and omens. Cryos's stewardship of the constellations ensures that these celestial beacons remain constant, marking time and destiny. Through Cryos, the Greeks understood the cosmos as a vast, ordered system, a universe, governed by laws and cycles beyond human control, but essential for existence. His presence reminds us that amidst the chaos of life, there exists a profound and eternal order. The stars, forever fixed in their courses, tell stories of fate, heroism, and the divine. Cryos embodies the eternal and unchanging foundations of the universe, the cosmic axis that holds the heavens and the rhythms of life. Cryos's cosmic influence extends most tangibly through his sons and their divine roles. Astraeus, the titan of dusk and stars, embodies the transition between day and night, carrying the sacred stars into the darkened sky. His union with Eos, the goddess of dawn, produced the 4 winds: Boreas, Notus, Zephyrus, and Eurysand, the myriad stars that light the night. These children symbolize the natural forces governing weather and celestial phenomena, essential elements in ancient Greek life. The winds were not mere gusts of air. They were divine beings with distinct personalities and powers, influencing navigation, agriculture, and warfare. The stars, fixed in their constellations, guided travelers and inspired countless myths. Cryos's son Pallas represents the martial and intellectual qualities necessary to maintain order and achieve victory. His daughter Nike, the goddess of victory, personifies the triumph born from skill, courage, and discipline. Through Pallas and Nike, Cryos's legacy is tied to the human pursuit of success and excellence. Perses, associated with destruction and peace, fathered Hecate, goddess of magic, crossroads, and the liminal spaces between worlds. Hecate's role as a guardian of thresholds, and her connection to the occult, underscores the mysterious and transformative aspects of Cryos's lineage. Though Cryos himself rarely takes center stage in myth, his cosmic stewardship is indispensable. He is the architect of the night sky, the keeper of the constellations, and the silent force ensuring the harmony of the universe. Ancient Greeks looked to the stars not only for navigation, but as reflections of fate and divine will. The constellations told stories, immortalized heroes, and foretold destinies. Cryos's role as the custodian of these celestial patterns anchors the cosmos in meaning and order. Philosophically, Cryos represents the enduring and unchanging principles underlying the universe. While human life is transient and chaotic, the heavens move with precision and purpose. His myth teaches us that true wisdom comes from recognizing the balance between change and permanence, chaos and order. In modern times, the stars continue to inspire wonder and inquiry, connecting us to the cosmic legacy Cryos embodies. His presence reminds us that even in the vastness of space, there is an order and pattern, an eternal dance of light and shadow, guiding humanity through the mysteries of existence. Oceanus, the ancient titan of the great, encircling river that was believed to surround the world, is one of the primordial forces of Greek mythology. Born of Gaia and Uranus, Oceanus personifies the endless, life-giving waters that flow beyond the edges of the known earth, the source of all rivers, seas, and springs. His vast domain represents the eternal and boundless ocean, the primal waters that encircle and sustain the world. Unlike other titans associated with elemental forces such as the sky or the sun, Oceanus governs the waters that flow and connect all life, making him a symbol of continuity, fertility, and the unbroken cycles of nature. Oceanus is often depicted as a bearded, majestic figure, with the upper body of a man and the tail of a serpent or fish, embodying the mysterious and powerful nature of the ocean itself. As the father of the Potamoy, the river gods, and the Oceanids, the nymphs of springs, rivers, and the sea. Oceanus is the source of countless divine and mortal beings connected to water. These offspring personify the diverse waters of the world, from mighty rivers like the Nile and the Alpheus, to the gentle brooks and sacred springs that nurture life and civilization. Oceanus's realm is one of fertility and life-giving sustenance, reflecting the essential role of water in the survival of all living things. Though Oceanus did not take part in the Titanomachy, the great war between Titans and Olympians, his presence remains significant as a timeless force, untamed and eternal. In Greek cosmology, Oceanus represents the cosmic boundary, the infinite river encircling the earth and separating the known world from the unknown. This boundary is both protective and mysterious, a limit beyond which lie the realms of chaos and the divine. His myth encapsulates humanity's reverence for the ocean as both a source of life and a symbol of the unknown, vast, powerful, and eternal. Oceanus's legacy is woven into the very fabric of nature, reminding us that life depends on the flow of water and that the earth itself is held in the embrace of this endless sea. Oceanus's influence is most vividly reflected through his numerous offspring, the river gods and Oceanus, who personify the many facets of the world's waters. These children are divine forces that govern the flowing rivers, serene springs, and nurturing waters that sustain both nature and human civilization. The Potamoy, his sons, are powerful river deities, each representing a specific river with its unique character and myth. For example, the river Alpheus was renowned for its mysterious subterranean flow, while the Nile was worshipped as a god whose annual flooding brought fertility to Egypt's lands. These river gods were revered as protectors of their waters and the lands nourished by them. The Oceanids, his daughters, are countless water nymphs who inhabit the springs, brooks, and lakes. They are gentle and nurturing, often linked to fertility, childbirth, and the life-giving properties of fresh water. They personify the gentler aspects of water's power, its ability to nurture growth, provide healing, and sustain life's delicate balance. Oceanus's refusal to join the Titanomachy underscores his nature as a neutral, eternal force, indifferent to the conflicts of gods and mortals, but vital to the cosmic order nonetheless. His presence is a reminder that some powers transcend the struggles of divine politics, embodying the timeless elements that sustain existence. In ancient Greek thought, water was sacred and fundamental. It was the medium of life's origin, a purifier, and a symbol of transformation and renewal. Oceanus, as the primeval ocean, stands at the center of these beliefs, embodying the source and flow of all waters. His myth conveys the deep human understanding of water's dual nature, both nurturing and potentially destructive, a giver of life and a barrier between worlds. The vast encircling river represented by Oceanus was also a cosmic boundary, marking the edge of the known world and the beginning of the unknown. This boundary symbolized the limits of human experience and knowledge, beyond which lay mystery, chaos, and the divine unknown. Oceanus's eternal flow teaches us that life is a continuous movement, an unending cycle of change and renewal. His waters carry the essence of existence, connecting earth, sea, and sky in a seamless whole. through Oceanus. The Greeks expressed reverence for the natural world's rhythms and acknowledged the profound mysteries that lie beyond the horizon. His legacy endures in the rivers that flow through human history and in the eternal dance of water that sustains all life. Iapetus, one of the great Titans, stands as a profound symbol of mortality, craftsmanship, and the human condition. Born of Gaia and Uranus, he embodies the tension between divine immortality and human fragility, the bridge between the eternal and the ephemeral. His name, often translated as the piercer or the mortal, hints at his complex role in mythology. Unlike his siblings, who often symbolize cosmic elements or universal forces, Iapetus represents the mortal aspect of existence, the craftsmanship that shapes human destiny, and the struggles inherent to the human condition. Iapetus fathered some of the most famous and tragic figures in Greek mythology: Atlas, who bears the heavens; Prometheus, the cunning benefactor of mankind; Epimetheus, the impulsive afterthought; and Menetius, the doomed titan of violent anger. Each son reflects a different facet of humanity's strength and endurance, wisdom and defiance, folly and consequence, wrath and downfall. Atlas, condemned to hold the sky for eternity, symbolizes the burden of responsibility and the weight of cosmic order. His punishment is eternal, a reminder of the consequences of rebellion and the endurance required to bear the world's demands. Prometheus, the cunning titan who defied Zeus by gifting fire to humanity, embodies foresight, creativity, and sacrifice. His story is one of compassion and rebellion, reflecting the complex relationship between gods and mortals, and the price of enlightenment. Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, represents impulsiveness and the unintended consequences of actions. His decision to accept Pandora and her box unleashed suffering upon humanity, symbolizing the unpredictable nature of fate. Menetius, associated with rashness and violent anger, was struck down by Zeus during the Titanomachy, highlighting the destructive potential of unchecked wrath. Through Iapetus and his sons, the Greeks explored themes of human suffering, innovation, punishment, and the delicate balance between wisdom and folly. Iapetus himself stands as the patriarch of this complex legacy, an embodiment of the mortal coil and the trials that define the human experience. His myth teaches us that to be human is to bear burdens, to strive for knowledge, to face consequences, and to navigate the fine line between hubris and humility. Iapetus's legacy is most vividly reflected in the lives and deeds of his 4 sons, each embodying distinct elements of the human experience and the moral lessons that accompany them. Atlas, perhaps the most iconic of Iapetus's offspring, was condemned after the Titanomachy to bear the heavens upon his shoulders for eternity. His punishment was both a burden and a symbol, a constant reminder of the consequences of defiance and the heavy weight of responsibility. Atlas's endurance embodies the human struggle to carry the weight of duty and fate, persevering through hardship despite overwhelming odds. Prometheus, the titan of foresight and cunning, stands in sharp contrast to his brother Atlas. Known as the benefactor of mankind, Prometheus defied Zeus by stealing fire from the gods and gifting it to humanity. This gift was transformative fire, represented knowledge, civilization, and power. However, his defiance came at a grave cost. Zeus punished Prometheus by chaining him to a rock, where an eagle would eat his regenerating liver daily, a torment that symbolized the eternal suffering that can accompany the pursuit of progress and rebellion against divine authority. Prometheus's story is rich with themes of sacrifice, intelligence, and the complexities of divine-human relationships. He is revered as a cultural hero who brought enlightenment to mortals. Yet his punishment serves as a cautionary tale about challenging the cosmic order. Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, offers a counterpoint to Prometheus's foresight. Impulsive and less thoughtful, Epimetheus accepted Pandora as a gift from the gods, despite Prometheus's warnings. Pandora's infamous box unleashed all the evil sorrow, pain, disease into the world, forever changing the human condition. Epimetheus's tale serves as a reminder of the consequences of careless decisions and the unforeseen ramifications of seemingly small actions. Meniscus, associated with violent anger and rashness, represents the darker aspects of human emotion. Struck down by Zeus with a thunderbolt during the Titanomachy, Meniscus's fate reflects the destructive potential of unchecked wrath and hubris. His story cautions against allowing passion and anger to overwhelm reason and balance. Together, these figures encapsulate the multifaceted nature of humanity's strength and endurance, wisdom and rebellion, folly and consequence, wrath and restraint. Iapetus, as their progenitor, symbolizes the complex heritage of mortal existence, the gifts and burdens passed down through generations. His myth invites reflection on the human journey, the trials and triumphs that define our place between the divine and the earthly. Through Iapetus and his sons, the Greeks explored the eternal themes of knowledge, sacrifice, responsibility, and the limits of power. His story remains a powerful allegory for the challenges of life, the pursuit of wisdom, and the price of defiance. Metis, the Titaness of wisdom, cunning, and deep thought, occupies a crucial place in Greek mythology, embodying the primal intelligence that underlies both divine and mortal realms. Her name, meaning wisdom or craft, reflects her essence as the source of strategic thought, cleverness, and profound insight. Born of the Titans Oceanus and Tithys, Metis represents the power of wisdom that precedes action, the careful planning, foresight, and skillful execution that shape destiny. Metis's influence is most famously seen in her role as the first consort of Zeus and the mother of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, war strategy, and crafts. Metis herself was renowned for her deep intelligence and was often consulted by the gods for her counsel. The myth of Metis is both profound and tragic. Zeus, warned by a prophecy that the child Metis bore would be more powerful than him, swallowed her whole to prevent being overthrown. Yet, the wisdom of Metis was not lost. Instead, it grew within Zeus, manifesting in the birth of Athena, who sprang fully grown and armored from Zeus's forehead. This dramatic birth symbolizes the fusion of divine power and wisdom, with Metis' essence becoming an integral part of Zeus himself. Metis embodies the intellectual force that guides rulers, warriors, and thinkers. Her story illustrates the complex relationship between raw power and enlightened thought, the necessity of wisdom to temper strength. Her presence in myth underscores the value the ancient Greeks placed on intelligence, prudence, and cunning as essential virtues for leadership and survival. Beyond her role as Athena's mother, Metis is the personification of strategic intelligence and the deep, often hidden knowledge that influences the course of events. She is the embodiment of the mind's ability to adapt, to plan, and to foresee the consequences of actions. Through Metis, the Greeks expressed their understanding that wisdom is both a gift and a responsibility, a force that shapes not only individual destiny, but the fate of gods and men alike. Metis's story highlights the profound intertwining of wisdom and power within the Greek pantheon. Her intellect was so formidable that even Zeus, the king of the gods, saw her not merely as a consort, but as a vital source of counsel and insight. The prophecy that her child would surpass him in strength and wisdom compelled Zeus to swallow her, a desperate act aimed at preserving his reign, but also symbolizing the internalization of wisdom within divine authority. From within Zeus's mind, Metis's wisdom did not fade. It transformed and gave birth to Athena, the goddess who would epitomize strategic warfare, crafts, and reason. Athena's emergence, fully grown, armored, and wise, serves as a powerful metaphor for the birth of intelligence from deep thought and reflection. This myth reflects the ancient Greek belief that true power must be guided by wisdom, and that intelligence, when internalized, can become a formidable force shaping the cosmos and human affairs. Metis's influence extends into the realm of strategy, craft, and prudence. She is the source of cleverness that enables gods and mortals to navigate complex challenges, avoid pitfalls, and achieve victory through cunning rather than brute force. Her legacy is evident not only in Athena's character, but in countless myths where strategy and intellect triumph over raw power and chaos. In philosophical traditions, Metis symbolizes the rational mind, the deep wisdom that contemplates, plans, and understands the nuances of existence. She embodies the cognitive processes that lead to insight, innovation, and the shaping of destiny. Her myth teaches that wisdom is not always visible or celebrated openly. It often works quietly within, guiding actions and decisions from the shadows. Metis also represents the concept of transformative knowledge, the kind that can alter the course of events and change the nature of power itself. Her story reminds us that intelligence is a living force, capable of growth and rebirth, emerging in unexpected ways to guide the future. Through Metis, the Greeks articulated a fundamental truth, that wisdom and power are inseparable, and that true leadership arises when strength is tempered by insight. Her influence endures in every act of thoughtful decision-making, every strategy devised, and every moment when knowledge lights the path through uncertainty.